Okay, sorry about that. So I'd like to call the closed session to order.
Thanks.
Roll call.
Mayor Garaventa,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hawkins,
Here.
Ooh.
Council Member Plummer,
Here.
Council Member Such,
Here.
Council Member Williams.
She's muted.
Hold on. She's here. She's just muted.
It's Matt. I think it's in your area. It's all feedback.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, Jim's computer is still working.
Oh, that needs to be turned. Yeah, flip it down, Matt. Just flip it down. Really?
Here, let me get it in there.
Yeah, just go turn it off real quick and then we can.
So, Doug?
Yes, Mayor.
I do see a member of the public, thing out there. It keeps flashing by me.
Yep.
I'm just wondering if should not be.
We haven't gone to closed session yet. I'm going to take us to.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Isn't logistics fun?
All right.
Okay. So I understand we have all 5 members present via the Zoom link, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so item B is going to be public comment. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on the closed session item?
And if you want to.
I think that's your opportunity, Rick.
I don't know what the closed session's about. I just tuning in, getting ready.
It's on.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mayor.
Yeah, so we're using the same Zoom meeting link for the regular meeting at 5 o'clock that we're using for our closed session item. The closed session item, it reads as, quote, threat to public services or facilities, Government Code Section 54957, consultation with Douglas L. White, City Attorney.
So COVID-19.
Okay.
It's a COVID-19 discussion.
So I don't know if you. So yeah, this is the closed session part. So you're going to be probably muted or disconnected until 5 o'clock. So, but if you,
so he can stay on. He could stay on, Mayor.
Yeah.
We'll be in closed session in a different room that will just be us.
Okay. So yeah, you can just.
I just tuned in early to make sure I knew how to do it.
Okay.
Good. All right.
Cool. So yeah, we won't do the regular session until 5 o'clock.
Okay, I'll tune back in then. Thank you.
Okay.
If anybody else has a question, either use the raise your hand button on your computer, or you can press *9 if you're on a telephone. Looks like we have one person on a telephone. Just to make sure, I'm going to unmute everybody real quickly. So you'd have to unmute yourself. Does anybody from the public have a question? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to mute everybody but the council real quick. And then council, we're going to be, Mayor, it's going to announce we're going to go into closed session now.
Yes, we're going to now adjourn into closed session. I think I've read it once. Do I need to read it again?
Nope, you're good.
Okay.
And so council members, you're going to get, much like you did when you get in, you'll get a little prompt that says to go to a different room. So I'm now going to send you into a different room. This is going to take me 2 seconds though. So.
Okay.
While you're doing that, Doug, may I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
If someone is muted, does that mean they can't hear?
No, we just can't hear them.
ordinance? It better be in there. Better be in there.
Where's Connie?
Put that in there. We still have a member of the public in here.
Anyway, a few people in here.
Anybody see Doug?
I don't.
No, or Connie either.
And then I still see members of the public in.
Yes, I do. I see 3 at least. Maybe 4.
I'll text Connie.
He's saying we need to click a button to join. I don't see where we have to join.
Hey, hold on one second. I think that everybody, so you guys are in the main room. So there's going to be a button that you got to press that says go into the breakout room.
You know where that button is, Doug?
It should pop up in the middle of your screen regardless of what kind of.
Yeah, it's a big button. You can't miss it.
I don't have a button.
Neither do I.
Well, you haven't, wait, you got to wait till I do it again. I got to, because Chris and I went over, but the rest of you.
Yeah, we're like, where's Doug?
So look for the button in the middle and it'll say, go to a break room. So I'm going to do it right now.
I don't see a button.
Well, I haven't done it yet. I'm doing
I
it.
used to do it right now.
Oh,
There we are.
You just
So Doug, are you going to go over ground rules, or do you want me to go over ground rules? As talk about
you can go ahead and go over
muting?
ground rules while I am.
Okay. So folks, ladies and gentlemen, we're trying to, we just finished our closed session, and we're going to be set up here to start the open session here pretty soon, pretty quickly. We want to ask all of you in the public to please mute your buttons. If our city attorney is running the Zoom meeting, and he can have, he'll be able to, I think he has control over muting people over that. If you need to, during the public comment session, then that's the time to unmute and have your comment. But as a kind of a 2-week or 1-week veteran of the Zoom meetings, the noise comes from all different angles if you aren't muted. So, and it detracts from the meeting. So the best thing to do is to keep yourselves muted unless you want to speak. We're going to have just going to go over the basics. We're going to have the pledge, which is going to be led by our Mayor Pro Tem, because he's in the room where the flag is. Roll call.
Mayor, if we could wait, I think we're missing. Oh, there she is. Councilmember Williams is back. Okay.
Okay.
Is she back?
She's back in.
Okay. And just a reminder to everyone, the public comment portion for non-agenda items is for issues that are not on the agenda. So if you're here to speak for on the emergency shelter text amendment, which is the public hearing, or the public health officer designation, or the 2 urgency ordinances, you'll have public comment at that time as opposed to the upfront public comment on non-agenda items. So if you want to speak on something that's not on our agenda, that will be the first public comment time. Otherwise, public comment for each individual issue is at when that in each item is being heard. Counselor, are we ready?
So just a few more instructions. The way this will work, if you want to contact, or if you want to comment, there is a button at the bottom of your computer screen that says raise hand, and you press that button and that lets us know that you want to talk. There's a more button if you're using an iPad or iPhone to listen in. You can press that and they give you the option to raise your hand. If it's video, you can just raise your hand and I'll make sure that we pick you up as well. And then lastly, for those who are on their phone, if you press *9, it will raise your hand and it'll let me know to unmute you so that you can talk. I have given everybody the control to unmute themselves. So you're not, as long as that works okay, then that's another way so that you can unmute yourself if you're on one of those devices and be able to talk and be recognized. So with that, Mayor, I think have we done our report out? We did our report out.
No, I haven't really I just kind of informally went over everything. I'm
Okay,
going to go ahead.
Let's go ahead and do our report out.
Okay. So I just want to report out from closed session that we gave, the only thing we need to report out from the closed session was that we gave staff direction. There was no formal motions. So what I'd like to do is start the open session. Okay, we got an issue there. Okay. So like to open the open session of our meeting, and I would like to ask our Mayor Pro Tem to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay, excellent. Hopefully everybody can hear me.
Okay.
Where are you?
To the flag,
Oh, there you are.
United States,
States of
America,
Yeah.
to the republic,
which is stands one nation
under God,
under God, indivisible,
with liberty
and justice for all. All righty, thank you.
For the record, that's always one of the more awkward ones.
You're all standing up.
Okay, let's go with item A, roll call.
Mayor Garaventa,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hawkins,
Here.
Councilmember Plummer,
here,
Councilmember Such,
Here.
Councilmember Williams.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. All members are present. Item B is city clerk's report on agenda posting.
The agenda was posted on Friday, April 3rd at about 2:15 p.m.
Okay. Item C is approval of the agenda. Is there any additions, corrections from council members? Hearing none, we'll go on to item D, which is the public comment non-agenda items. So the public may address the council on any item of public interest not otherwise on the agenda that is within the jurisdiction of the city. No action may be taken. Matters to be addressed may be referred to city staff or placed on the subsequent meeting agenda. Speakers are limited to a 5-minute presentation. Is there anyone that would like to speak on public comment on the non-agenda items?
On agenda. Yeah.
And Mayor, if I could also say, I forgot two things. You can also ask a question by using the chat function there. And if you post a question there, then I will read it to the.
Okay. So I think we have somebody named Voter. Are
Yep.
you, did you have something that you want to comment on?
I wanted to comment on the topic of, the fines and, people, is that what we're talking about now, or is that?
You're going to want to
No.
wait till item G2.
Okay.
Yeah, this is just for non-agenda items for public comment. That will come up later.
Okay, sounds good. I'll wait.
Okay. Is there anybody else out in the public that'd like to speak on the non-agenda public comment portion of our agenda?
I do. Would that be okay?
Hang on.
Reverb.
I got the reverb somewhere. Well, I did.
Would that be okay for me to talk?
Yeah, now
There
you're
you go.
Non-agenda.
Sorry, say that again.
when you talk, if you could just turn down your volume.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. So I just want to say that, first of all, I am from a communist country in South America. And I just want to remind everyone that government is supposed to protect our liberties, not take it away. And there's something called common sense. If you're sick, best thing for you to do is to stay home. And you go somewhere and you notice people are sick and coughing, to stay away. By shutting down the economy and restricting people from their liberties will cause irreparable harm to our economy, which in turn will, make it a lot worse than the virus itself and kill a lot more people. That's all I wanted to share.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else like to speak on the public comment portion?
And Mayor, just to remind folks, there's the raise your hand button at the bottom of your computer or on the more button that you can press. You can use the chat function, or if you're on a regular phone, you can press *9. Mayor, we have another hand up, which is TAYSD's phone.
Okay.
Unmute them.
Okay. Hello?
TAYSD phone, you're on.
Yes, I have a question. Can we ask any questions?
Sure. Well, this is the public comment portion for items that's not on the agenda. And
How do we, go ahead.
I did see in the chat room that you're asking about obtaining a marriage license.
Correct, for Tuolumne County.
Okay, yeah. So we're the city of Sonora. We do not issue marriage licenses. That is done by the county of Tuolumne.
And they're closed, so.
Well, they're supposed to be open from 8 to 12, last I heard.
Perfect.
They're at the administration building, 2 South Green Street.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else like to speak on public comment?
So we have a couple of chat items, but let's go through it, Mayor, one more time when we ask these questions. Again, if you're on a phone, you can press *9. Otherwise, go to the bottom of your computer and raise your hand, or go to your right. I'll also look and go through, if you're on video right now and you want to talk, raise your hand. I think Tara Cambria wants to talk. I'm going to unmute.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I was in the comment section here, and I just wanted to talk about what's being proposed, that we're going to be fined for disobeying what's being proposed, being that, what's that?
Oh, you're going to
Okay,
be
good, Joseph.
I can talk?
Well, hang on. You're talking about the fines and what's being proposed, and that's actually a different portion of our meeting.
Oh.
This part of the meeting is for just those that want to speak on items that are not on the agenda.
Okay, so when we come to that point.
Yeah, we'll be coming to that point at about 3 or 4 items down the list.
G2.
It's actually item G2, isn't it?
Yep,
Doug?
G2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're still, if you're looking at the agenda, we're still on D.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let me know when that comes about.
Oh, you betcha, we will. And then Danita asked in the chat room, how do we access the homeless hotel program in our city? We have homeless people who shelter in place.
That's being run through the county, Mayor.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Mary Rose.
So this is the city administrator, Mary Rose. Rutikanga, the homeless program is being run through the county program. So I would urge you to contact county behavioral health or social services.
Okay. And then I'm going to read the next one from Valerie. I've been using Zoom for my school. It really helps if everyone mutes their microphones. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. It says also if you hold down the space bar down, you can temporarily unmute. So it seems to me if you're on a laptop, you can use the space bar as a toggle switch, as that's what she's implying anyway. Ryan is asking if is the agenda publicly posted? If so, can someone share a link? Yes, please. Yes.
I'm working on that, Mayor.
I'm sorry?
I'm working on posting the link.
Oh, okay. But isn't it on the already
It's on
on
our website.
Yeah, okay.
There's a link on the website.
Yep.
So yeah, go to, oh, he's already said thanks.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, sonoraca.com. sonoraca.com comes up with the main site, and there should be a button somewhere on that page that says City Council Agendas.
Right on the home page.
Yeah, current meetings.
Okay, I've gone through the chat so far. You're welcome, Ryan. So I'm going to do that part. So is there anyone else that's out there that wants to speak on any item that's public comment on any item not on the agenda? I'm kind of going to the, okay. There is one more in the chat come up about Joann's, I believe. Real quick here. How come stores like Joann's and Big Five are allowed to remain open? I do not see them as essential. Do we want to?
City Attorney, are we allowed to comment on those questions?
Yeah,
That's
we can.
That's what I'm wondering.
We can talk about why why they're. Do you want to do it, or you want me to?
Yeah, I can do it, and please back me up, or Police Chief Vanderwell, if you could. So Big Five is considered essential because more than anything, they have their arms and ammunition, which is deemed essential in our county through our sheriff and our police chief. So that is why they're open. Joann's has fabric in which people are using to make masks at the moment, which are deemed essential. So that's why those two businesses are open at the moment.
Okay. And another question's come in the chat room. Do you know when the county is going to make a decision on RDF's homeless hotel program? I haven't looked at tomorrow's agenda for the Board of Supervisors meeting yet. I don't know if anyone else has, but that would be a county thing. We're a city, so I'm not sure if anyone else has anything to say about that.
Yeah, again, the homeless program is run through the county. So I would urge the questions in regards to the homeless program to be addressed to the county.
And someone has said that it is on their agenda tomorrow. Can you address the new law that the city can be sued if not taking care of the homeless? I don't know if we can address that under public comment.
Well, I mean, there are certain immunities that come from the declaration of emergency that's been done. So the city doesn't have any exposure for dealing with the homeless. That being said, the homeless population is largely served, as the city administrators indicated, by the county. And
Yeah,
all the money is directed towards the counties, not to the city.
Yeah, through the continuum of care through the county, all the homeless monies for this jurisdiction is through our continuum of care. So that is run through Tuolumne County.
So I hope that answers your question, Astrid. did you have something more to say, Doug?
No, not on this one, but the Terra Cambria, the essential services question, that's going to be addressed. That's the last item on the agenda, so it'll be the one right after you go. So, but we do have a hand up. Mayor Beretta Gardens in.
Oh, I think. Well, okay, go ahead. I think that was her question, I thought, but
Is she done? Otherwise, I'll lower her hand if it is. Beretta Gardens, you have to unmute yourself if you want to talk. Going once, going twice. All right, I'm going to go ahead and lower their hand then.
okay. Let me go back through. Joseph, we're going to talk about what's essential and what's not, I think, in one of our agenda items.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be at talking about that then. Danita, again, that's going to be a county issue. She's asking social services does not have the RDF program. I asked them. It's under the county jurisdiction, not the city. Is that correct, Mary Rose?
Yes.
Okay. And again, they're meeting tomorrow at 9 o'clock through the Zoom process as well.
So again, the homeless programs are not through the city. Again, the homeless programs are through the county continuum of care, which those questions should be addressed to the county.
And Alexander Horad just made a statement saying we may end up with a higher homeless population as we go through the economic meltdown because of the shutdown. And I think that's as far as I've gotten through the chat. I just want to give one last opportunity for everyone to, if they have a comment on public comment, non-agenda items, if they want to have something to say. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead with our agenda.
Mayor, just a reminder, I'm going to do this just because it's our first time doing this.
Okay.
Hit the raise your hand button at the bottom or hit the more button if you're using an iPad or iPad. I think Councilmember Such has a question. But
I don't have a raise your hand button and I don't have a more button. I'm on an Apple laptop.
You're on a laptop. So it's a little bit different. If you go on, are you on? Okay, so Councilmember Such, if you go down to participants and click on participants, it will have a raise your hand button in there.
Oh, yeah.
Councilmember Plummer,
I see.
Oh, you muted yourself, Councilmember Plummer. I can't unmute you.
No, I was going to just use the space bar for clarity and so we don't get any least reverb possible. I still can't find a raising. Oh, there. Okay, find it. I found it.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I would suggest that the council members keep theirs unmuted for the duration unless it becomes a real issue.
Yep.
So.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment on non-agenda items unless you see, Doug, anybody at the last second.
No, but the one last thing is I just want to remind everybody that this meeting is being recorded. It's a public meeting. It will record the chat line as well, so be mindful of that.
Right, and it will be broadcast on Access Tuolumne on Wednesday, I believe, is the current night, and it will be online there as well.
Yep.
accesstuolumne.org.
So I just want to remind everybody it's being recorded, and then we'll upload it as soon as we're done. Well, with probably the next day or something, or whenever Access Tuolumne broadcasts it. Okay, item E. Item E is consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar are considered routine and will be voted on in one motion unless a council member or member of the public has a question or wishes to discuss an item. In that case, the item will be removed from the consent calendar, considered separately. There's only one item on the consent calendar. It's approval of disbursements in the amount of $146,973.97 for payroll, inclusive of employee salaries, employer and employee taxes, and retirement contributions, and miscellaneous voluntary employee deductions. So at this time, I'm going to ask if there's any public comment on the consent calendar item. Just that item. And if you have a comment, please raise your hand.
Sounds like background noise, right?
Yep.
Okay.
We have no raised hand, Mayor.
Okay. So I'll bring it back to the council and ask for a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mayor Pro Tem Hawkins and seconded by Councilmember Plummer to approve the consent calendar. Is there any further discussion among the council members? If not, I'll call for the question. I believe we have to do this roll call. Mary Rose.
Mayor Garaventa,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hawkins,
Yes.
Councilmember Plummer,
Yes.
Councilmember Such,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams.
Okay, I understand that to be a unanimous vote. 5-0. Okay, item F is public hearings. There's only one. It is to introduce by title ordinance number, ordinance number 865, emergency shelter text amendment. It's a waiver of the further reading of the proposed ordinance. It's to open the public hearing and receive comments, and then, well, this just gives us a little different than we used to in the past. So we'll open the public hearing and receive comments on ordinance title, ordinance number 865, emergency shelter text amendment. I believe that goes to Community Development Director Kellogg. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Rochelle. You're outside.
Thank you. Bear with us. It's a little different tonight. So as you go,
hang on a second. Is there a way you can turn your microphone down just a little bit? It's over modulating.
yes.
Just the microphone part.
Yeah, either that,
Is
Rochelle.
that better?
Yeah.
Or yeah. Go for it.
Okay, you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. As you are aware, the city just went through the process of having our housing element, going through an update on our housing element, and it's for our 2019-24 housing element. It was adopted by the council in December of 2019. It has been reviewed by the Department of Housing and Community Development. We are in compliance with the housing element, except for the fact that we do need to identify a location for emergency shelters that's a use allowed by right versus a use permit. Right now, the only place in the city that allows for emergency shelters is our commercial zone, and it does require a use permit. So to be in compliance with Government's Code Section 65583A4A, we do need to follow through with this and get this completed. A use allowed by right will allow a shelter subject to some management requirements, and we'll go over that here in just a second, but it will have the same restrictions as other uses that are allowed by right in those various zoning districts as identified. We are recommending that you do approve the text amendment that I'm going to go through. The ordinance that has been presented, everything that's underlined are things that we're adding. Things that have strike through are those things that we are recommending deleting from the current municipal code. We are recommending that emergency shelters be a use allowed by right in our R3 multifamily zoning district, subject to the following conditions. Shelters would be limited to 16 beds or less. Shelters must be within a building or structure that has been constructed in accordance with California building codes. Shelter must have on-site management, and the occupancy is limited to 6 months or less by a homeless person. Shelters are prohibited from operating within 300 feet of any other emergency shelter, school, youth center, or daycare, and those are the parameters that we've included for your consideration. This was considered by the Planning Commission at their March 9th meeting. They did ask that we insert one other requirement, and that is that they provide verification that they were able to obtain property insurance for the shelters, and so we did include that in the ordinance as directed. It's very important that we get our housing element certified. A lot of the funding that the city receives is tied to that, and one of the most important ones recently is they have threatened to withhold cities and counties SB1 street money if they don't have a certified housing element. The other thing that is occurring is the governor is looking at litigation against cities that don't have certified housing element. The other thing that can happen is that it allows for development to occur with no input from the city. So we just need to be really careful, and we need to move forward and get in compliance with the state on our housing element. So in considering the ordinance, I wanted to go through, just walk you kind of through it. The ordinance is, proposed ordinance is ordinance number 865. The first part of this ordinance is actually some cleanup. We've been doing this as we bring things before you. When there's issues that we need to clean up, we do at the same time. In the past, what they did is they assigned a section number for every definition. And our attorney does not recommend that because it does get hard sometimes to find slots for new definitions in our section codes. So we are removing all of the section code references for those definitions, and instead we're just doing it in alphabetical order by the item or the title. We also are adding in here accessory building definition because they had listed accessory building in the sections, but never did define it. So we did that as a cleanup as well. We actually defined what an accessory building is in the code. And then we, as far as definitions, we added the definition for emergency shelters, and we also included the definition for transitional housing. So those are the two things that we added under the definition section in this ordinance. The other thing that is included in here, sorry, I'm just slumming around here, or transitional housing, sorry, and we have that in here as well. And then when the meat of this is to identify our zoning area, and again, we amended chapter 17.20, and that's the R3 multifamily residential zone. And it is a use allowed by right. Again, it's for 16 beds or less. And they can't be within 300 feet of other emergency shelters, schools, youth center, or daycare. And the city also, as we talked about, must provide verification of property insurance. The other chapter that was amended was uses permitted by use permit. And we put in there that emergency shelters and transitional housing in the C zone is allowed with a use permit. However, they do, again, have the restriction. We added the restriction that they can't be within 300 feet of any other emergency shelter, school, youth center, or daycare. The reason the R3 was selected, we looked at our zoning areas. The R3 is our highest density area. One of the things that we had to also look at is we had to have zones that are within service areas, so they have to be, it can't be on the outskirts of the city where people can't get to services. Our R3 zone is distributed throughout, close to our downtown. There are some areas just a little outside of downtown, so it does provide that link to services. And it also has to, the zoning district also has to be large enough to accommodate the homeless population. When we did our point in time survey for the city, we found 51 individuals residing, homeless individuals residing within the city limits. And so there's enough property within that R3 zoning district to accommodate the facilities that would be needed. If you have any questions, I can answer it, but we are recommending approval of this ordinance, or actually that you introduce and waive the first reading of the ordinance.
Okay, thank you, Rochelle. Is among council members now, is there any questions for staff?
Yes.
Mr. Plummer?
Okay, Rochelle, do you have access to a map where you could actually show us the R3 areas? I had 3 questions. I'll get them to you all immediately, and then you can deal with them in the order you choose. How long do we have to approve this? I know you've been working hard on it. But
they wanted to see the ordinance by April. So that's what we are working towards. We have a very short timeline. to get this back to them. I would imagine with what's going on now, there probably is going to be some delay on their side as well. But April is the time when they wanted to see this ordinance come back to them.
And we have not heard of any delay yet on that timeline.
No, I have not received anything from HCD saying that that's been extended.
Okay.
Okay, hang on, Mark. I forgot, one thing I forgot to do is ask Mary Rose. Usually what I usually do is ask if Rochelle or Chris or whoever department is making a presentation, I usually go back and ask the city administrator if she had anything to add, and I didn't do that. So I just want to see if Mary Rose had anything to add before I go to council questions.
No, I don't. Rochelle covered it all. Just wanted to reiterate the fact the deadline we have set right now, we have not received any delay exemption from HCD at this point. So we're still on the deadline to have this housing element certified in April. The Planning Commission has already authorized it. So again, we're just looking at the council to introduce and waive the first reading.
Oh, okay, thank you. Go ahead, Mark, and then Colette, I see you raise your hand. You're next.
Okay. So, Rochelle.
I can't hear you, Mark.
Is there anything to do with the microphone or?
No, it's actually my headset. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So once it's done or approved where it's by right, then neighboring homeowners or landowners, other people concerned about it, have no way to stop this. Is that a correct presumption?
That's correct. We have, once it's allowed by right, they have a right to proceed with the project or utilizing or repurposing of another residential property for a shelter. But we did, like I said, we put as many restrictions as we could in. So we limited to 16 beds to keep it on the smaller side, and also so that we didn't have very large facilities in a few places, but more spreading it out so that you didn't have a big concentration in one area. But you're right, it's by building permit. As long as they meet and some of it might not even trigger a building permit if they're not doing any renovations to the structure. But I will tell you this, we really, the city has to identify a zoning district.
Yes,
we're in a no-win situation in that we can't ignore it. We have to move forward with some zoning district designation.
And do we have to have enough that it covers the whole 51 people included in that pit count?
Well, we did a point in time survey of 51. The county survey was much larger than that. That was the county-wide survey.
Right.
We're going to make the case with the state that we need to accommodate what's currently within the city. It's usually a percentage of that. I don't know if they'll buy off on us taking a percentage of the 51, or if they'll, because the county number is so much larger, they're going to want us to show that we can at least accommodate the 51. And by keeping it at 16, we're not talking a lot of properties.
Okay, but if I understand the city's position, they've basically bent us over a barrel and said, you're going to do it or we'll do it for you. Is that correct?
Now, this law came into effect when Ed Wiley was still here. The city has kicked this can as far down the road as we can because the state has been given the HCD a lot more teeth. For a long time, there wasn't a lot of teeth at the state level related to the housing element. That's not the case anymore. There's a lot more teeth that the state has, to the point where they can just say, city, it doesn't matter what you say, we can just override. And if you don't have a certified housing element, projects can move forward without any say of the city.
And Councilmember Plummer, don't forget that if we don't have this in place to identify an area for the emergency shelter, and we're not addressing the point in time numbers, we will not be able to enforce any type of camping ordinances. So this will allow us to address those numbers and hopefully address some of the larger homeless numbers that, homeless camps that we're looking at. Right now, we have no way of addressing that. We are bound by the the court action that does not allow us to remove anybody from public property. So this is kind of, this is what the state is requiring us to identify areas in which emergency shelters can be built by right or permitted by right.
And so I'm probably going to vote to approve this, but my understanding, and I think the public should understand, because this seems to be an awful, awful ordinance, is that by us choosing how we're going to get hammered, we can stay a little bit in control of how and where those placements will be. And otherwise, the state will come in and say, essentially, we'll put it where we want.
It does give us some teeth as far as, like I said, we limited the bed count. We limited, at least we picked what zoning district we felt was the most appropriate. And we asked for on-site management. We kept it away from schools. We did some of the things that aren't in the state law. So we added some teeth.
Well, thank you for your efforts.
We're trying.
I'm done.
Okay, Colette, I believe you're next.
I just have a question, a question and a comment. Is there a list of buildings that meet the requirements for this?
No, we don't have to provide a list of buildings. We just have to show that there's enough property that's zoned correctly. The way these are set up, they could take a single family home and do an 8-bed. They could do, we have one already in the city that's in a residential home that people might not even know exists. So they can just renovate an existing home. If they want to use more of a commercial property that's in that zone for an R3 or for residential purposes, there could be some building code requirements, but they, we don't have to identify particular properties. This would be up to the association or the agency that was going to set up the shelter.
Okay. And then just on page 5 of your definitions, demolition needs quotation marks. Sorry.
Oh, okay, we'll fix it.
Okay. That was it.
Okay, any other questions from the council on for staff? Hearing none. Go ahead, open it to public comment, and let me. I think I'll start with the chat room again. No one minds.
Hey, Mayor, if I could, just let me give the instructions so people who are waiting, raise their hand. So to raise your hand, which was somebody already did, just press the raise your hand button that's either at the bottom of your screen, or if you're using an iPhone or iPad, you click the more button and it should be right there. If you're on a regular phone, you can press *9, and then that will cause you to raise your hand. And if you're on a computer screen, if you go down and you click on participants, you should see the raise your hand button down there as well. So you want to read some of the ones in the chat room first, Mayor, while we get hands raised?
Sure, I'll read Beretta Gardens Inn, which I believe is Astrid, I think. But since 67% of the homeless are mentally ill, who will oversee their behavior in a multifamily area?
So as we discussed, they will have to have on-site management. So when an application was to come in for a facility like this, we would review the on-site management and make sure that they have the appropriate management to take on the facility.
Okay. From Alexander Horat, whose property can get repurposed? Are we talking about public property?
There is a possibility if there was a county facility or a state facility that somebody wanted to use for shelter purposes, yes, it could. But it could be private individuals too that rent their space, their property out to an agency to run a shelter there.
Okay. McCurley's National Flooring, Cliff, I think. Great question. I'm curious of this as well. I'm not quite sure. It was during Mr. Plummer's, was one of Mr. Plummer's questions, but I'm not quite sure what he's referring to.
Mayor, I would just read the I wouldn't read the dialogue or narrative. I just read the questions. So.
Okay, all right. We did have voters said vote no. Sounds like USSR. Let's see. Alexander Horat, can they use someone's home and repurpose? I think that's another version of what you asked earlier.
And that would be yes, so they could.
Mary Rose?
City Attorney, are we just allowing one comment per public?
No,
Or how are we doing that?
no, since we don't have any time limits and time.
Okay,
limits,
just
like
making
typically in
sure.
the chat room.
Sure.
Okay.
And then there was another one earlier, Mayor, that you missed, and
Did I?
same one, Alexander Horat. Are these shelters owned by the county, or do people voluntarily offer housing for emergency shelter?
It might not be owned by a
Right.
county or state or agency, but it would be overseen by an agency such as ATCA or one of the agencies that take care, oversee shelter type facilities. Or it could be the county.
Okay, so that's what was in the chat room. Is there anyone that wants to speak in public comment? Do you see anybody there, Doug?
I do,
With raised
voter.
hands?
I'm gonna
voter?
I'm gonna unmute them right now and lower their hand.
Okay.
So they should be unmuted now.
Hello?
Is it? Voter, go ahead.
Yes, so could you use private property to house homeless? I mean, just if it's a large home and you could just bring a bunch of people in with somebody else that owns the house? Or how does that work?
So they'd have to be, it'd have to be associated with some type of an agency that can manage a homeless shelter. It couldn't be where a private individual just decided to have a bunch of homeless people move in with them. That's not what we're talking about. An emergency shelter would have a management company. They'd have an on-site manager. It'd be associated with an agency that has the capability of running a homeless shelter, or an emergency shelter. So no, it couldn't just be a private individual opening up their doors for a bunch of homeless people to move in.
Okay, well, that makes sense. If the people decide that that homeless are going to be in a certain area, like what you guys proposed, I feel if you just voted no and let them do it, at least you're on record that you voted no and you went against what the government of California is doing. And if they're going to put them here anyways, well, let them do it.
So again, I would just like
Okay. I was just thinking in first comment. Go ahead.
Again, I would just like to caution the council that by not having a designated zone, we are putting our city at risk of losing state funding.
Yeah, state funding is unfortunately, I think with all the homeless that are going to come with this COVID-19, there's going to be so many people that are homeless that it's just going to be, out of control here eventually, especially if you don't let the little businesses, start. I see you guys are covering, yourself, which I understand that, but it's just too bad that, it's come down to this where, it's not a voluntary thing where it's mandatory. It's unfortunate.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else like to speak on public comment?
Voter, I'm muting you again.
Wasn't there someone else you had, Doug?
Yeah, we got one in the chat room, or actually now two. Would this allow us to strictly endorse any camps? Question in force.
Mary Rose, I'm going to give
Yeah,
that
so
one to you.
it depends on how many beds are created by allowing this zone to be used for emergency shelters. The way, and Doug, chime in if I'm speaking out of turn, but the way that the court ruled was there has to be a percentage portion of shelter beds available for your point in time count of your displaced or unsheltered persons to be able to enforce any type of no camping ordinance within the city jurisdiction. So it just depends on how many shelter beds are created that with this zoning that is identified in the ordinance.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that from a legal perspective, the reality of it is they can go anywhere they want in a public area unless there is a place for them to otherwise go. So you can't
Yes.
remove them from a public area, be it a playground, be it some area, unless you provided them a place to go. And that is separate and apart from whether or not you get any money. It's about your ability to even move them to more appropriate or safer environments.
Yes.
So I think we have another question, which is, you want to read, you want Beretta Gardens, Mayor? You want that one?
Oh, you want me? I thought you were, okay, hang on. Let me get back to that.
We're trying to figure out who's going to read the questions.
Yeah, right.
I think
Yeah, since the old hospital has 3 floors with rooms sitting empty, why can you not circumvent the reason that is not earthquake proof to house some of the homeless for the moment? And I don't know who wants to answer that. Yeah, it's one thing, it's county property, so we don't have jurisdiction over it. But I think there's been some discussion of some sort. Does anyone want to speak on that?
I think Councilmember Such wants to speak.
I actually know quite a bit about that. The reason that hospital can't be used has nothing to do with being earthquake proof. You don't have to be earthquake proof to have an inpatient psych unit. You don't have to be earthquake proof to have a skilled nursing facility. The problem, I actually toured the hospital recently with this in mind, and the plumbing is all has to be I mean, that hospital has been abandoned for 12 years, and nothing works in it any longer. So that's not an option. That's not an option without millions of dollars of renovation. So.
And again, it's county property. The city does not have jurisdiction over that county property.
Well, and just from a legal perspective, I can tell you that even though we're in an emergency, they haven't waived those emergency requirements in terms of the earthquake retrofitting. And if they did, it would likely be right now housed for just COVID patients or for overflow.
Okay.
You got another? You got another?
Go ahead.
Mayor, you want to read the chat?
Oh, I didn't. Sorry, I thought you were.
I'll read them just so that we can. Stay
the other chat. I didn't go there because it basically agreed that the old hospital should be used for the homeless population.
Okay, and then we have one from John has raised his hand, so I'm going to okay. He's already unmuted, so if he wants to go ahead, John, if you want to speak. We can't really hear you. Can you turn up your volume or talk closer to your microphone?
Talking as close as I can.
It's really hard to hear you. We can barely.
For some reason, I can barely hear him.
Can you turn your volume up?
Yeah, my volume's all the way up. Sorry.
That's okay. We can kind of hear you now.
Well, I just quick comment. It sounds like from what I'm hearing is that the only option, this is a must do and we don't have a choice, we have to do it. If that's the case, could we agree to it because we must, but then at the same time pass and enforce camping, the no camping strictly at the same time?
So if I heard correctly, the question was it sounds like this is a must. You kind of have to do this. It's a must-do thing, and that if it's a must-do thing, then we need to enforce the no camping at the same time. And the question for that, the answer from what I understand it to that is that the facility has to be built and staffed and people in it before we can actually enforce the no camping ordinance, if I'm not mistaken. Doug?
That's correct. That's correct.
So it's
kind of
it's
the
not
first step.
Exactly, it's a first step. It's not going to be done at the same time because it's an evolutionary type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Hey, John, I'm going to mute you again because I think you're done. Because of the sound problems, if you want to use the chat line, that would probably work a little bit better. And Mayor, you have another one, Alexander Horowitz, or I'm sorry, Horat. So I'm going to unmute. They just did.
Hi. So my concern has to do with property rights. It wasn't too clear to me. So if a home happens to be vacant, it belongs to someone and it's within the zoning that they will allow it. Is that a voluntary thing? Somebody wants to give up their home for this, or is that something that the state will come in and take your home for that purpose?
Oh, no, the
Or
state
can that
won't.
open the door for that?
This is all voluntary.
All voluntary.
Totally voluntary.
And S. McLaughlin is asking, how about using the buildings at the fairgrounds for the homeless? Fairgrounds are a state facility.
Yep.
So we don't have any jurisdiction over that.
I will say, Mayor, that the governor has already designated using fairgrounds in general or state property to house homeless. So
And
go ahead, Mary Rose.
sorry, Doug, I just want to reiterate the fact that, you know, from a city perspective, our fairgrounds are used year round for events and are a prime spot for, you know, event generation, commercial generation. So, you know, we would be hard pressed to allow the state to come in here and to use the fairgrounds as a place to house the displaced. So again, this is why we are looking at this particular zoning in this ordinance to ensure that the state does not have a reason to come in and take the fairgrounds to house displaced persons.
And I think there's a question for how long. So
Yeah,
it's
I'm not sure what that's a reference to.
So I'm assuming how long can they use the buildings? So this is a zoning issue. So the zone would be allowed until the city council rescinded it. So, and you wouldn't have to, if it's a use by right, you also wouldn't have to get a conditional use permit or something else in order to be able to operate in that zone. So Mayor, Voter's got his hand again. So usually in most of our meetings, you can only come up to the podium once.
Yep,
Because this is so untraditional, I think that maybe we make an exception for the moment and let them go ahead. But in the future, we'll probably give people one bite at the apple, unless it's in the chat room, because you can only ask so many questions at a time if you're using chat. So I'm gonna go ahead and unmute Voter.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so does this mean that this is just for our local homeless, or can they bus homeless from LA and San Francisco up here and have a big old mess and give it to us?
So so this ordinance has to do with the numbers that are found locally. So in terms of meeting your local homeless population, where where the people who fill the shelter come from eventually is not necessarily within our control. But you have the numbers that you establish are based off of basically what's been identified as being Sonora's homeless population, or at least a percentage of it, I should say.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that makes sense, but you know, I just know how this stuff seems to work. You know, they want to get rid of certain populations in their little area and they bus them up to the rural areas, and that's how it goes. Thank you.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Last call, if you want to raise your hand, if you want to ask a question, again, hit the raise your hand button. Or if you're on a regular phone, press *9. If you're on a computer, go under participants, and that's where the raise your hand button is. If you're on an iPad or iPhone, there's a more button, and the button should be under there. And you can also ask questions on the chat line. And I think we have another question. What I've read is that every county will be using their county hotels for their homeless population. So that's potentially true, but it's mostly for COVID-19 positive homeless population that they use the hotel rooms to allow people who are homeless to stay in a hotel room for the time that they're in quarantine. They're quarantined until you test negative twice. It's not
So
just
I would just reiterate that this ordinance is not a COVID ordinance. This is a public hearing to address our housing element that is required by the state outside of the emergency that we're dealing with at the moment.
Okay, last call for public comment. Hearing no more, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to the council for comments, or for questions or comments. I guess comments and or motion.
So, okay, everybody can hear me.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, you're up.
Okay, excellent. So basically the way I take all of this is that, again, this is the state of California tying the different localities' hands almost as a one-size-fits-all measure. At least that's how I'm taking this. I'll be voting for it, but basically my reason for voting for it is for protecting our city because, again, we need the funding from the state. Anybody that goes back and looks at redevelopment and what happened, what, 6, 7, 8 years ago now, Doug, and sees what happened with redevelopment and how every county and city in the state of California was really screwed over. That's one of the big reasons why the state holds the purse strings now so strongly. So I'll be voting yes for this, but mainly to protect our little city. I mean, I guess my biggest thing, I want to see homeless help. I want to see people help. Rochelle, I really got to applaud you for taking control of this and really helping out, you know, really helping the process along to protect the city. That's really all I've got. And this is really awkward.
It is strange. Mr. Plummer.
Like Mayor Pro Tem Hawkins said, this, he didn't put it in these terms, but as an ordinance, this stinks. On the other hand, I will also be voting for it because our betters in Sacramento will otherwise control the process and put the same type of things where they choose instead of where we have some control of how we space these things. So I will be voting for it, but unhappily. I have to thank both Mary Rose and Rochelle for having done the best they can in a pretty tough situation.
Okay. Okay. Colette, do you have anything?
I do not.
Okay. Alrighty. Connie, do you have anything?
Oh.
Okay. And so as for me, it's pretty much the same as the Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Plummer. It's a thing that we have to identify at least one zone for this to receive funding receive enough funding from the state, and also to have a little more control over our where we place things. So with that, I'm going to go ahead, and if there's no further discussion, I'm going to go ahead and call for the question. Well, actually, Mary Rose, can you do the roll call?
Have
Mayor Garaventa.
Have we had a motion?
I don't think there was a motion.
You are so correct. Can I get a motion from someone?
I'll make it.
Colette will do it.
I would like to introduce by title ordinance number 865, emergency shelter text amendment.
And waive
that's all I have to say.
And
waive the first.
Oh, and waive the further reading of the proposed.
The first reading.
And waive the first reading of the proposed ordinance.
Right. Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Such and seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Hawkins to introduce ordinance 865 and waive the first reading. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the question. Mary Rose.
Mayor Garaventa.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hawkins.
Yes.
Councilmember Plummer.
Yes.
Councilmember Such.
Yes.
Councilmember Williams.
Yes.
Okay, it passes unanimously. Okay, let me find my agenda. Here we go. So now we're on to new business item G. The first one is to adopt resolution 0406-2020-A, delegating the City of Sonora Public Health Office duties to the Tuolumne County Public Health Officer. Is that going to be Doug or Mary Rose?
It's going to be a Doug item.
Okay, Mr. White.
Hey, Mayor and Council, what you have before you is a resolution that is in response to COVID-19. Essentially, as we're dealing with an international pandemic that's seen most countries close down to businesses and states like the state of California issue stay-at-home orders, it becomes important that the city adopts a public health officer. It is the city's recommendation that we just recognize and abrogate our authority to the county's public health officer. We've been working with the county, who's taken the lead and is designed through their emergency operations to take the lead in these situations, to work with that public health officer. But to do that, we need to actually adopt this resolution to make their orders effective within our jurisdiction. Should we not do that, we would be forced to go and find somebody. Might be a little difficult to go and do interviews at this point in time.
Yeah.
But we'd have to go and find somebody, and we were responsible for paying them. And candidly, from a staff perspective, I don't know that there's a compelling reason, because we have the full faith, at least in our public health officers as it stands. With that, I'm happy to answer any question council has and any questions that the members of the public might have as well.
Okay, Mary Rose, do you have anything to add?
No, just want to reiterate the fact that we at the city do have the full faith of the public health officer. So the delegation of those duties to the county are done, with our full trust and faith. And we would be implementing the orders that the public health officer of the county would be ordering.
Okay. So council members, any questions for staff?
Yes.
Mr. Plummer.
Okay, one of them was, maybe it was in here, but how long does this last, Doug?
This is for the duration of the COVID-19 statewide state of emergency.
Okay.
So it would terminate simultaneously with that termination.
And so it starts in July, effective immediately. I'm not sure I quite understand that language. As I recall that we were starting this in July,
you mean
but we were making it effective immediately.
No, it would be retrospective to the state state of emergency on March 17th, 2020, or March 13th, 2020.
Okay, I couldn't make notes because I had to read everything on the computer initially. So I can't go back to where I found it quickly. The other thing is, are we paying the county anything for this service? So, okay.
No, we are not.
That's good to know.
We negotiated a really good deal.
That's as good as we're going to get with this county. It's nice to be pulling together.
I will say, Councilman Plummer, that public health, county public health have been doing a fantastic job. And we're just really thankful and appreciative that they have really stepped in and, really brought forth together their whole department, their whole health team to address this and work aggressively to ensure the health and safety of our residents. So again, we're really appreciative of Tuolumne County Public Health.
Thank you.
Hey, Councilmember Plummer, there was some language in there that says that they would typically, in a non-emergency type situation, take effect in July.
Okay.
But we were just saying that that because of the nature of the emergency, it takes effect immediately.
Okay, well, I read that it took effect, well,
that's how it would normally
immediately.
Yeah, that's how it would normally be.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions for staff? Hearing and seeing no one, I'll ask if there's any public comment on this item.
So this would be, I'll do my little routine again. This would be when you use the raise your hand function, which voters already done, or you can use the chat line. If you're going to use the raise your hand, if you're on a computer, go to the participants, click on that. There's a button at the bottom of it you press. If you're on a smartphone or iPad or similar device, just go to the bottom, click the more button, and there should be a raise your hand function. And if you're on a regular phone, press *9 again, or you can use the chat function if you'd like. So Mayor, you have a comment from voters.
Yeah. Raise your hand. So I have a couple of comments. I don't know if voters referring to this particular item. He says vote no. And from S. McLaughlin says that county public health is invaluable.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could, Mayor, I think that just so that we don't get, because we can't screen which ones are questions and which are just kind of more narrative statements or questions. So we're not going to, we're only going to read the questions on the chat line because we want to make sure that that's useful. So Alexander Hort, so this is a phrase as a question is, why would you vote to take away our constitutional rights? Our liberties are invaluable. I don't know that we're talking about a constitutional right. You have to have you're legally required in California to have a public health officer, particularly when you're going through a public health emergency and a declaration of emergency subject to that. So all we're doing is adopting one that already exists that's serving the area that we don't have to pay for. That's the only things. You want to go to voter now, Mayor, and
sure.
Unmute him and then lower his hand?
Hi. So this person that you guys hire, if this person says that we have to stay at home and only the big corporations can stay open, the little guy has to stay at home, and the president, Donald Trump, says we're open for business, you know, let everybody go back to work, who supersedes our little local health guy, or does the president of the United States hold sway?
So in these kinds of things, this is a states' right issue. So we're actually controlled first and foremost by the decisions of the governor of the state of California. The county can make decisions that are more strict, but not less stringent. And the city can make decisions that are more strict, but not less stringent. So in this situation, we are governed by the state of California and the decisions of Governor Newsom.
And the county health officer has already been in place. So we're not hiring anybody and the county's not hiring anyone. He's already in place and has been in place for a while. So we will just be operating under the guidance of Dr. Sajenko at Tuolumne County Public Health.
And to be clear, we're also still under, even at the federal level, the president's started off as a 15-day plan that's now turned into a 30-day plan to stay at home. So the hope was that we were going to be open by Easter, but that date even changed from the president.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're now on, even at the federal level, a 30-day stay at home. That's not mandated federally. It's more of a recommendation.
Okay, so if this man that you have hired already, if he says it's okay to open up the small businesses, can he do that?
Not if it's inconsistent with the governor's order.
Okay, all right, well, I still feel that this is just a lot of big government, you know, telling us what to do on a local level, and I just feel that's bad, and I would say vote no on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then from Jason Terry, who's the county OES director, has texted in through the chat room saying, Supervisor Brennan would like to convey her gratitude for all the wonderful partners participating in response to COVID.
Thank you, Supervisor
Exactly.
Brennan and Jason Terry. We really appreciate you guys at the county.
Exactly.
So Mayor Jennifer Bush has raised her hand. Again, I'm going by your names on the screen. I don't know if it's your real names. I don't think the one person's name's voter, but we're just going off of that. So I'm going to unmute you, Jennifer, and lower your hand so you can talk.
I'm sorry, I'm kind of coming into this a little bit late, but is this issue to fine individuals, or is this to choose what is essential business from what is not?
That item's still coming up. Those are two separate items. They're coming up. One of them's coming up next, and the second one is after that. So essential businesses is last. The next one's going to be talking about the administrative citation process.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
I'll mute you again.
Okay.
So again, does anybody have any questions? You can post to the chat line, or you can hit *9 if you're on a phone, or hit your razor.
Questions pertaining to this agenda item.
Exactly. This is simply designating the city's public health office duties to the county's public health officer. That's simply all we're doing with this item. Any further comments?
So there is a question. how many cases of COVID-19 does Sonora have?
So again, it's at the jurisdiction of the county reporting out how many county-wide cases. We do not have a public health officer in the city jurisdiction, so we do not report out on city incorporated numbers. Currently, there is 2 cases. One, however, was, I believe, contracted from outside of the county. And so really legitimately, there is 1 case in Tuolumne County, but identifiable as 2 people that have actually tested positive in Tuolumne County at the moment. But again, those numbers come from the county public health officer.
So I think we're done, Mayor.
Okay. Is there any other?
Wait.
Go ahead. Did you have something, Doug?
I'm trying to see if it's a question or if it's a statement. Okay, so Beretta Gardens, I'll address that question in the upcoming item.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and close the public comment on that particular item and bring it back to the council for a motion and or further discussion.
I have a little bit of discussion.
Go ahead, Mr. Hawkins.
I just don't want to basically step on anyone else. With the city delegating the public health officer duties to the Tuolumne County Public Health Officer, one thing I would ask everybody to keep in mind that even before California became a state and the different counties came together, Jim, I believe you're the one who taught me this, and then I went and looked it up, was that even in Tuolumne County, a hospital was set up on I believe it was the courthouse grounds, and we're talking 1848, 1850. Mm-hmm. So this position is not just simply big government. Now, I would caution, because I think there's definitely some big government things that are getting set up. But I think in this case, this is just Sonora better working with the county in order to achieve basically a better health for Tuolumne County and its citizens. So that's just my 2 cents in there. This keeps us from actually having to hire someone separate than the county, and it keeps us in lockstep with Tuolumne County.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Any other council members, comments? If not, I'm going to be looking for a motion.
I'll move to adopt resolution 46-2020A, delegating the City of Sonora Public Health Officer duties to the Tuolumne County Public Health Officer.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by by Mayor Pro Tem Hawkins and seconded by Councilmember Plummer to adopt resolution 0406-2020-A. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the question. Mary Rose?
Mayor Garaventa.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hawkins.
Yes.
Councilmember Plummer.
Yes.
Councilmember Such.
Yes.
Councilmember Williams.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Mayor, who was the motion? I'm sorry, who was the motion and the second on that one?
The Mayor Pro Tem was the,
okay.
And Mr. Plummer.
Okay, sorry, just wanted to reiterate.
Okay. Okay, item number 2 under new business is to waive a reading and introduce an urgency ordinance number 866, reading by title only, waiving further reading, and adoption of an urgency ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sonora. That is 1, adopting the governor's executive order N-33-20, directing all individuals in the state to stay at their place of residence. 2, adopting any orders that the Tuolumne County Health Officer or any official of the state of California may issue to limit the spread of COVID-19 during the duration of the COVID-19 state of emergency. And 3, ordering all individuals in the city of Sonora to stay at their place of residence and setting forth enforcement rules. And I believe, Doug, this is yours, correct?
Yeah. So, Mayor and Council, what you have before you is really just an enforcement mechanism for the orders that have already been promulgated. So in some ways, the way it reads is a little bit misleading because it makes it sound like you're actually consenting to or agreeing with the orders as they're handed down. That's not the case. Those orders are binding irrespective of what we do. What we really have to do is, in order to be able to create a non-criminal method for enforcement, we have to tie those into our code such that they're recognized for purposes of enforcement. So let me just restate this. What this does is it creates a civil remedy so that the only remedy that's available is not criminal. For those who don't comply with the governor's orders, anything that's adopted by the county that would supersede, that would be more strict, or anything that's issued by the public health officer. So, and this is dynamic in the sense that it contemplates things that could be later adopted that are not adopted at this time and point. So it creates a fine mechanism that after there's an education process to try to make sure people are aware that they're not supposed to be operating, that they could be fined administratively $250 for the first violation, $500 for the second violation, and $1,000 for the third violation. So one of the particulars that's important to this is, I'm going to use a restaurant as an example. So let's say that there's a restaurant that refused to close, which is in direct contradiction of the governor's order. Not only would the restaurant operator be eligible to be fined, but also the patrons would be in violation of it, and they would be fined or eligible to be fined as well. Absent this remedy, the sole method for enforcement of these orders and the sole thing that would be left to law enforcement is to go down a criminal road, which we do not believe is in the best interest of the community, and are recommending against. So the goal of this is to provide an enforcement mechanism for an orders that is the law of the land. Doesn't really matter whether we agree with it or not. It is the law of the land, and it's related to a declared public health and safety emergency. And even if you don't believe your state government, you can look at your federal government, and you can look at how other international world governments have handled that. And this is the mechanism by which to not have it go down a criminal road. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you would like, but it is contemplated that these would hopefully never be used, but only be followed after an education campaign that would hopefully be successful and would be reserved for mostly the only most blatant knowing violations.
And Mr. Mayor, if I could just
Yes.
add a brief comment, and then also if we could allow our police chief
Yes.
Vanderwill to speak as well about the enforcement piece. I would just like to say that the health officer just today released another order in regards to essential versus non-essential activities and recreation. So once again, identifying what those essential services are, what those essential activities are, and those non-essential activities. Again, as like the city attorney said, this would set up an administrative mechanism for the city to be able to have a remedy for those businesses that do not comply with those orders. We at the city are under the orders. We've discussed it all on how we are handling complaints of businesses that are not in compliance. It is an educational process in which we are contacting business owners, educating them on the governor and public health officers' orders, and then addressing the non-compliance as such. But we are not going and starting to fine businesses, right off the bat. The police chief has said in other press releases that he would not be doing any type of criminal enforcement. So once again, this addresses the ability for the city to have an administrative mechanism as opposed to a criminal mechanism for enforcement of those orders. And if Chief Vanderwill would like to speak, I would like him to address the enforcement of this.
Chief Vanderwill.
Yes, thank you. So just to reiterate what our attorney said, is the governor's order is a legal document, and a violation of that order is a criminal matter. There's already a mechanism in place to enforce that on a criminal aspect. Having a process to address this on an administrative side of the house and be able to impose fines through licensing is a much better solution than to go after these people criminally right off the bat. We already have a 4-step process of identifying and tracking, making notifications, educating these business owners who are not in compliance or being reported as not in compliance. And we just need, fortunately, we're getting a lot of compliance, but there are still some holdouts. And so we're at the point where we need to know, we need to have something in place to address what's next. What do we do with those folks that are not complying? And how do we honor and respect and legitimize what the business owners are doing that are in compliance, and recognizing their efforts when they see that these other businesses just fail to comply? I'm not excited about making this a criminal enforcement matter. The governor was pretty clear that that wasn't his intentions. So I support this ordinance in that sense, and I'm open to any questions you may have.
Okay, do we have any questions for staff?
I'd like to know who decides what is essential and what isn't essential.
Okay, hang on. This is the part for the council members to ask questions of staff. There'll be public comment coming up in a minute. Is there any questions for staff and for the council members? I don't hear anybody. Matter of fact, I don't hear anybody.
Oh, they're muted.
Sorry.
Okay,
Oh.
Colette?
I don't actually have a question. I just want to say that this is a public health issue, and public health issues trump what we may feel is a loss of personal liberties. I mean, I certainly am not interested in giving up personal liberties, but this is a serious, deadly public health issue. And the fact that we have 1 or 2 cases in Sonora now does not predict what we will have in 2 weeks. You know, we're always chasing, in this virus, you're chasing the truth, always. And I also just would like to just say to local businesses, the vast majority are complying with this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's nothing here that, I don't want anyone to get the impression that we are maligning private businesses. This, you know, I understand that this is a terrible economic hardship, but so is an outbreak of this virus. That's all I have to say.
Okay, anyone else amongst the council?
Not yet.
Before I open it up to public? Okay, is there anybody, so we'll go ahead and open it up to public comment. Doug, do you have anybody up there that you can see that wants to speak? Do we still have Doug?
I muted myself. Sorry about that. Let me go through real quickly my little spiel before, so that while they're talking, that anybody who wants to participate can. So, raise your hand function again. *9 if you're on a regular phone. If you're on a computer, go down to manage participants, hit raise your hand. If you're on an iPad, iPhone, go down to the more button and click it, and then there'll be a raise your hand function. So with that, Mayor, we have some on the chat, but we'll take the folks who raise their hand first. So voter would be the first one up. I'm gonna unmute him and lower his hand.
Okay.
Okay, so with one case in Tuolumne County, and if the local sheriff, the police department even issues one fine to a small business owner, I mean, you're just hurting your own county. You know, I mean, it is unbelievable that the mega corporations get to stay open and our little town gets crushed. And if you guys don't see that, I mean, it's coming. You know, it's where the system is, you know, not for us. I know you guys get your paycheck from Sacramento, but, you know, I would suggest,
no.
You know, you vote no, you know, on this. And, you know, it's just unbelievable that a little guy will get fined and the big guys get to stay open. You know, I just don't think that's fair. And, you know, what do you guys think about my argument to that?
So is that your questions?
Yeah, it's just my statement.
Okay.
my question.
All right. I'm gonna mute you again, and then. So just for the record, just to clear up any kind of misconceptions, the city council receives little to no stipend, and the stipend comes from the city. It doesn't come from Sacramento. Let's see, Jennifer Bush is up next, so I'm going to unmute her and lower her hand. And you're up.
Hi, thank you. I appreciate the efforts to keep our community safe from this virus and the slowdown for the hospitals to have to deal with them. I appreciate that. I am concerned about such steep fines. I have seen in our community that everybody is doing their part to keep things clean, to stay in place, and except for the need to go out, most everybody that I have talked to and the places that I have been, I understand that they are doing their part in this community to keep everybody safe. I want to know why there are such steep fines. I think it's the job, it's your job certainly to educate and inform and the community, but there is an extent to which we need to be able to govern ourselves also. So wanting to keep my family safe will stay in place. We will not make contact with a lot of individuals, but my concern is that the government is stepping in and saying, or our city council is stepping in and saying they want to shut down businesses, I think, that legitimately can be open. So maybe the fines should not be nearly so steep and give those businesses and your community, the people who vote for you, the opportunity to exercise wisdom and to stay in place without these other kinds of restrictions or enforcements.
So again, this would only be addressing businesses that are deemed non-essential as per the governor's order and as per the public health officer's order as well. So businesses that legitimately can stay open, that are deemed essential, would not be subject to any of these fines. And again, as the city attorney has stated, as myself has stated, and as our police chief has stated, fining a business would be the last resort. We have said many times that education, community, the community members, that would be our enforcement mechanism. We're not looking to go out and find businesses. We have received quite a bit of complaints, and for the most part, the businesses are in compliance, but it's those businesses that are still holding out and not complying with the governor's order and the public health officer's order. So again, looking at those non-essential businesses.
But there are some businesses there are some organizations that I believe are essential. But if you don't believe them to be essential, like leaving a Lowe's open and closing down, maybe a location where I get particular foods or something.
So again, it's based off of the governor's order of what the state has deemed essential versus non-essential. So those businesses, and Doug, you can chime in if you would like, City Attorney White, that is out of our call of what is essential versus non-essential. That is at the state level of what the governor has ordered. There are some businesses that have closed down that could potentially stay open, but it's at their discretion of whether or not they close or stay open. So again, just looking at the businesses as per the governor's order on March 19th that is deemed non-essential.
So just to be really clear, this doesn't add any new businesses, nor has the city of Sonora taken any steps to make anything more restrictive than what has come down from the state or from the county. So we haven't done any of that. All this does is somebody who would be violating the law that was set forth in one of those orders, it gives us a remedy to whereby we don't have to use go down a criminal route, use police, district attorney, court resources, and instead can direct that into a fine. And we have a process. I mean, I think, Chief, it might be good just to go through for the public. I mean, that process it involves education and outreach. So it's only after somebody has been informed several times that what they're doing isn't okay, would we get into a situation where these fines would ever take place. So there'd be a very conscious, intentional, blatant violation at that point in time.
But my thought is that there are very, very steep fines if someone should choose to violate it at their own cost, which I think that they would have a right to be open if they wanted to. I think the orders from higher up, I understand it's the governor. I don't agree with them, with that order. We don't need to have such steep fines. They could still be a fine of a lesser amount that the business would choose to, that the business would choose to go ahead and pay. Although I don't believe that they should be fined at all.
Yeah, see, and to your point, when we made the recommendations on the fine, again, it's cheaper than somebody having to hire an attorney to represent them in a court of law for violations or multiple days of violations. And the reason that patrons could be fined as well is for that purposeful intent. Somebody who wants to so-called stay open because it's more cost effective to stay open in violation of the order, that it has to be a deterrent. Else there's no point in doing it. And if we don't do our job, then and we see an outbreak, then this thing goes on a lot longer. Because I mean, I'm not so much worried about Sonora in terms of the outbreak. I'm more worried about people coming up from the valley or from the Bay Area. They're coming from hot zones, trying to relocate where there's maybe more ventilators and access to healthcare. But as you've seen in New York, and when they were talking about even trying to just say, okay, you cannot leave New York because it's such a hot zone, the federal government wouldn't step in. We couldn't do that from a legal standpoint. So for better or worse, we're all in this together.
Yeah. Okay. I'll give the floor over to someone else.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else?
So I'm going to mute that. And then we have John. Actually, I think we have the chief. So sorry, I must have.
As Doug referenced, he said he would like me to cover the steps that we take when we get complaints. So we'll get a complaint in. It's filtered through one area of our department, our city departments. List created. We identify those who are compliant versus non-compliant, and then step one after that is to make contact with the business and advise them of the complaint. If we get another complaint, we contact that business again with an educational letter and likely some referrals to some resources, some state resources. Step three is actually a warning letter. If this violation continues, these are the consequences. Step four is the enforcement portion of that. And so what today is dealing with is what that enforcement portion looks like. Is it going to be a criminal matter, or is it going to be a administrative fees? My personal opinion is this is the least intrusive way of enforcing this order. We are obligated by government code to enforce the governor's order. We as a city government and law enforcement agency are obligated. So this is the least intrusive way that we can do this.
Okay. All right, we're still on. Is there any questions for Mr. Vanderweel, or Chief Vanderweel from the council on that, what he just had to say? Okay, we're going to go on to continue on with public comment.
So I'm going to unmute John, Mayor, and lower his hand. Okay. John?
Hi, this is John. My sound was bad before. Can you hear me now?
Barely. It's low.
Well, I'll just try to talk loud. I'm just trying to figure out, I provide lodging with Airbnbs, vacation rentals. I have people staying at my rentals, for instance, PG&E workers who are essential workers. And for them to work, they need my essential business for a place to stay while they're working. That's one example. I have a doctor in another place now. I read in the newspaper that this my type of housing may be subject to a fine. Is that dependent on who is staying at my place, why they're staying there, and who vets these people? Am I responsible, or are these individuals themselves responsible?
So that's actually the next item up on the agenda. So as it stands right now, there would be no change to that because there's the Airbnb / short-term rental issue is next up on the agenda.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Okay. So just stay on the line and we'll get you on for that one. So I'm going to mute you. And then Alexander Horit would be next. I'm going to unmute you and lower your hand.
Thank you. My question is for the sheriff. Isn't your job to uphold the Constitution rather than, isn't that your first job, to uphold the Constitution?
I think she's referring to the police chief,
Yes.
Yeah, that's not the sheriff.
not the sheriff. The sheriff's the county.
Okay, to the police chief. Isn't your job to uphold the Constitution? Your first and most important job.
So
go ahead and finish your questions, and then he'll answer them when you're all done, or we'll answer
Okay.
them. So. Is that your only question?
Yeah, I just really think this is crossing the line. I think as a county, we should make a stand to the fact everyone is doing their part. There's something called common sense. If everyone is doing their part in this pandemic, why should there be such a restrictive measures to take away our liberties and choose winners from losers?
Okay, I'm going to mute you, and then we can. I think that was more of a comment, but but yeah, clearly police chiefs are subject. They take an oath to obey the federal constitution, the state constitution, and enforce the laws of both the federal government and the state. So I do think we have some questions. I'm gonna have to go back a little bit because we got a little bit of a dialogue on the chat line. So give me a second. So is cat food essential? So pet stores currently fall within the essential services that are allowed to stay open. But just because you sell cat food doesn't necessarily mean your business is an essential one. So typically we'll go in and look at what your primary source of revenue is in order to be able to determine the nature of your business. So for instance, you couldn't be like a smoke shop that I had that all of a sudden decided to, in one city that decided to sell toilet paper. All of a sudden deciding to sell toilet paper doesn't make you an essential service. It's a comment. McDonald's is a food service so that they can operate drive-through or takeout.
Yep.
No in-room, no in dining.
Why is the weed store open?
I don't, Chief, how are we keeping our small businesses safe from criminals? Because some of them are being broken into while closed. I don't know if you want to go with that one.
I could say that, part of our operational response to this is a little higher visibility for our officers in the field. Hopefully that as a deterrent alone will help minimize that. And we're also holding patrol briefings out in the field at various shopping centers, parking lots, to one, to be seen, and to secondly, to deter any potential crime.
So the next one, nail salons and gyms are not essential, but some of them are open for business. So you can contact the city if you believe something's operating that shouldn't be operating. Both of those are deemed not essential under the governor's orders. And cosmetologists have to be particularly concerned, as do those who hold ABC licenses, because if you're found to not be in compliance, then you risk losing your license to be able to operate in the future. Mayor, I think Councilmember Plummer actually has a question. So
Not so much a question, but my understanding is, and I think this will help some people's questions, is that this enforcement process is complaint driven. We do not have our city administrators or policemen driving around looking for open businesses. This is completely complaint driven. Is that true?
Yes, that is correct. So if you're seeing hair salons and nail salons that are still open, please contact the city, and we will ensure that those complaints are followed up on.
So one thing, checkpoint at Jamestown, that's not viable. We don't have that authority. The county doesn't have that authority, and it's been deemed unconstitutional, even as it relates to other states. So you can't set up checkpoints to keep people out. So this is sort of a statement, but it's a question, and it's come up twice. So I think that I think it's important. We'll just read it. So it sounds like local government's kicking small business while they're down. We live in a country where we are supposedly free. However, I'm being told that I can't work. If we take necessary precautions and customers are willing to take the risk by going out and shopping with us, why can't it be a personal choice whether or not we go out or not? And that's because, just like the law, you can't it's not your choice whether or not if somebody wants to allow you to assault them, to hurt them, to do things of that nature. There are choices, and there's bigger societal obligations that are at play here. You, in fact, might be among the 80% of the people that this has little to no effect of, or an effect commonly to the cold. But statistically, looking at numbers internationally now, and even in the United States, 20% of folks will require hospitalization. There will be a mortality rate, at least at the 3%. That's not knowing how many people haven't been tested, so that might bring all those numbers down. But it's still a significant number because of the high infection rate. And at the end of the day, it's not really our choice. Those choices have been made by those in government positions to be able to make those choices, and they're supported by the law and the constitutions that we were sworn to uphold. Why is the weed store open? As it stands right now, marijuana falls within the medicinal category. So medical marijuana is allowed to operate. Whether or not non-medicinal marijuana will be allowed to continue is something I'm not aware of, but Sonora's dispensary is medical based, and so it falls within that category. What about dog grooming? Dog grooming is not essential. So, and then I have a raised hand for 8788. I'm going to just use the last four so that you know to raise your hand, but it's 8788. I'm going to unmute you and lower your hand.
Yeah, hi, Mr. White. This is Chief New with Sonora City Fire. Just point of clarification, just wanted to make sure you had given an example when you first started about a restaurant, if it was still open. Just wanted to clarify that restaurants are essential and allowed to be open if it's dine out or takeout delivery only.
Yep. Yep. So restaurants could still open. Unfortunately, it's a little bit more difficult for those in the cosmetology industry, gyms, and we're trying to find ways to be creative in the way that we interpret these things so that if business can be conducted, you know, by ordering and not coming into the store, then sometimes we can keep some of those open. But in a lot of ways, our hands are tied by what the governor's order has specifically set forth.
Okay, is there any more public comment on this item, which is item number 2?
I got another one from Myrna Doring, so I'm going to unmute that person, Mayor, and lower.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Myra.
I'm an 80-year-old person, and I appreciate everyone staying at home as I am. I just want to impress on those shop owners that feel that they should stay open in violation of the law. They do not know if people are coming into their shop, whether they're going to be infected or not. And then they go shopping somewhere where I happen to come along. It's endangering my health. So I feel that it's important to just respect one another. I'm sorry, I have a neighbor that's trying to open her business right now, and it's just been devastating, and I feel bad. But we have to respect one another's right to live. And I'm trying my best to save hospital beds in case they're needed, because it could really spiral into a pandemic here. With our short supplies, that would be catastrophic. So I appreciate everyone that's closed, and sorry that they're losing business, and it really does make a hard time. But it could be worse if everyone got sick. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Myrna. Anyone else would like to speak on this? Okay, bring it back to I'll close the public comment and bring it back to the.
Mayor, I'm sorry, Tammy Obar.
Oh,
yes.
Is there one more? Okay,
yes,
go ahead,
hello.
Tammy.
My name's Tammy. I'm the general manager of the Sonora Inn and the Roadway Inn. I was just wanted to comment. So currently we are staying open to essential workers and a lot of the homeless that are getting vouchers from churches and so forth. We're currently asking them to sign a document saying why they're in the area and what their purpose is. I just wanted to confirm, you know, that like PG&E and all that would be considered an essential worker, and whether or not if we did have somebody falsify why they were here, if that could potentially cause any backlash on us.
Okay, well, that's the next item,
Yeah.
rather than this item.
Yeah, that's really the next item. So
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. So, I mean, it always goes to intent. So just to answer a little bit of your question, if you knew somebody was not what they represented, or it came out that you knew what they were and they were not representing, then yeah, you could be guilty of something fairly serious.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, then I'll go ahead and close the public comment and bring it back to the council for discussion and or motion. Hello?
So,
Mayor Pro Tem Hawkins.
Okay, excellent. So, couple questions I'll ask staff now that everybody's gotten their chance to talk. Okay, say we go through the process, this would be the fourth step, essentially. That would be correct, Doug? This would be the fourth step of fine?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. What happens if someone believes that they were given a fine incorrectly? They said, hey, I'm an essential employee, whatever happens, what does the appeal process look like?
It's a regular appeal, so they get to go in front of an administrative hearing officer. They get to make their case, and then that hearing officer makes a decision on whether or not there's merit in their argument or not. So they would still have due process to be able to appeal any kind of fine that was put in front of them.
And Doug, that administrative hearing officer is the council, correct?
It can be, yeah. Or it can also be a third party, but.
Excellent. I have to go back to what Council Member Such said earlier, because I think every single member of this council, we hate to see this happen, not just at an economic standpoint, but to know that we could possibly get our neighbors and friends sick. It scares the daylights out of me, and I have 6 children at home, and they haven't really went anywhere other than out in the yard to play. So this whole thing scares the daylights out of me. It's uncomfortable to even talk about, but the reality is that we have to do something. I'm going to vote yes on this. I don't like to vote yes on this because, so many make the argument, and they're correct in this, when it comes down to our Constitution, but we do have a public health emergency. So the reality is that there's still a due process. There is still the ability to appeal, and this is the fourth step. So again, but none of this is comfortable for any of the council. I know that. I know this council, and it concerns everyone. So again, I'll be voting yes, but I don't like it. I don't like it whatsoever. And I hope that no one gets a fine, and the city council, I know, and our law enforcement, I know, and our sheriff's department, anybody that's in the know is not running around looking for people to fine. That's not the goal of this whole thing. I've received a bunch of calls on this, and one of the complaints that I got was, well, since they can't get their taxes, they're going to start fining people. That's not the goal of the city. It's just simply, I know that is not the goal. So again, I hate it, but I'll be voting yes for it, and I don't like it, and I don't want to see it happen.
Okay. Hey, Mr. Plummer.
Thank you. So, like Matt, I really dislike this, and I hope that I am going to suggest that we put a sunset on this emergency order, even though our attorney will recommend otherwise, of 30 days, because we should have to revisit this if we are going to deprive people of their business and right to assembly. That said, our Constitution is not a suicide pact. People who get ill, some of them will die. We know that. And if we can keep more people from coming up from from areas that are infected worse than here, we will save people from getting ill and very likely save people's lives. That's important. The first business of any kind of government is public safety, and we have to take that very seriously. So this is why I will be voting for this, and maybe not with my usual reluctance, but I believe I will not vote for it unless we put a sunset that is really close, essentially 2 meetings away. Thank you, I'm done.
So Doug, under the auspices of an urgency ordinance, this has to be approved, reviewed and reapproved in 45 days, correct? City Attorney White?
Yeah. So, we'll be bringing it back and reporting on it anyway. And I don't suspect it's ever going to get used. I think it's just to give us a non-criminal remedy. Again, the whole goal of this, bear in mind, is that you don't have to put somebody in handcuffs for non-compliance, and instead you can choose to just give them a ticket instead. So, so let me just put it in context. It's either you tell law enforcement that they have to put somebody in handcuffs, or you tell them that they can write a ticket. So we're trying to treat this more like a speeding ticket than we are like a more serious crime.
And when we bring it back, we can definitely report out on whether or not we've had to issue any of these citations. I doubt that it will be any type of high number whatsoever, if at all. But that's something definitely we can do, is report out any of the numbers of citations.
I just want to point out, Section 6 says that the ordinance would be in effect until the governor ends the state of emergency or until the ordinance is rescinded by the council, whichever occurs first. So we could rescind it anytime.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I think that we would be reassuring our public if we put a sunset in and then reinstated it. I think that we should have to have our feet to the fire if we're going to keep doing this and not have anything. I mean, that's a long time till the governor decides to change things. And he's looking at San Francisco and LA and other hotbeds of infection, and he's concerned about the entire state. We're concerned about the city of Sonora. And I think we should deal with it on a local basis. And like I say, if we're going to keep doing this, keep our feet to the fire and let people,
Well, my point, Mark, is that we can, because we can rescind it at any time.
I think what you probably want, Councilmember Plumber, is more of a report on whether or not it's been used or not. Right.
Okay, if it hasn't been used, yes, obviously there's not much of a problem.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I think the challenge is because we don't really have the option of opting out of California or opting out of the United States. We're kind of subject to whatever those rules are. And again, I don't think we're going to wind up using this because I mean, candidly, I think the community's been great. I think they've done a good job adhering to it. It's a wonderful community. I think people care about each other. You see a high level of engagement today on, last time I've seen 78 people to Sonora. I don't think I've ever seen 78 people on a meeting for Sonora since I've been here. And that's even when people win a lot of awards. So there's definitely a high level of engagement, but I think we can solve your problem by reporting back at every meeting, whether or not it's been utilized since the last meeting. So that's first. And then second, I think that what we can do is continue to educate people and keep them kind of aware. So I think if we report back, you have the ability at that same meeting, because we're doing this as an urgency item, to rescind it. We don't even have to do, it would take 4/5 vote to do it in less than 24 hours, but we could even add it to the agenda on a 4/5 vote. But again, without it, our only remedy is to actually put people in handcuffs technically, which is not a road we want to go down.
No, that's obviously something I don't want to see. And my concern is mostly with anything that's attracting people from out of town. Since we can't stop people at the county border, we have very limited means of protecting our people. And the unfortunate thing about this is that it both looks and feels like the dangers from outside, and yet we are attacking those within, or at least punishing those within. Now, okay, well.
I can say, I mean, we're dealing, because as you guys know, I represent Angels Camp as well.
Right.
And we're dealing with very, very similar issues and challenges that you guys are. And it's true. I mean, this started in China a few months ago, and here we are now, right? So the the issues are real, the challenges are real in terms of the limitations that we're working with. I think in an ideal world, we probably would just not allow other people from outside the area to come in for a period of time, and then life in Sonora could go on, at least in some fashion. Not normal, but that's not an option to us legally. And so absent that option, we need a non-criminal mechanism for enforcement. And it's important to recognize this mechanism can be used not only against people who have been long-term Sonora residents, but people who come from out of town who choose not to follow the rules and be with the program in the same way that the residents of Sonora have so far.
I know everybody's seen the picture of the surfer being arrested. I think it was down in Malibu. And that is something that I will absolutely stand up against, because there's no need to do an arrest for something like that. The one person that's off alone by themselves is being arrested by 2 police officers. I don't want to put our police department in that kind of situation, but
that's
there's
crazy.
no need to do that. So I think if there's something way less criminal that is voting, that we can vote for while still following California law that we are required to do, then I think this is what we need to do.
Yeah. Remember, this is a mechanism that we need to go after the ones that are blatantly violating the orders and endangering the public by doing so. It's not something that we're going to be doing to just anybody. And there's several steps before they'd even get to the point where they even get to the fine. They have to be notified, warned first. Whether we want to do a sunset clause or not, I think we're better off agendizing the item every other meeting, or even every meeting.
You can do it every meeting if you want.
And just talk about it and see where we're at. Yeah, we can rescind this according to Section 6. We don't have to wait for the governor's order to rescind it, so we can do it ourselves. It's just a mechanism that keeps our police from having to deal with it in a criminal manner and impose fines instead. And it's only for those that are blatantly violating the order. So I think that's the best way to go about it.
You're pretty persuasive there, and I'm rethinking. It's kind of awkward not being in the same room.
It is. So, any further discussion, or is there someone gonna? Do we have I don't recall us having a motion yet, do we?
Councilmember Sutch has a question.
Oh, Colette?
I don't actually have a question. I just want to reiterate that a public health crisis is not, like if you have TB, you don't have a right. You actually never have had a right to just walk around and infect people. So this isn't a new, what's new about this is no one who is alive on this earth has lived through something like this before. So it feels new, but you've never, in public health crises, you never have a right to endanger other people, and you never have. So food is an essential. Jennifer, you mentioned, you should be able to go buy food where you want to buy food. No one's restricting food buying. It's considered essential. But you don't have a right to infect people. And the thing about this virus is it's asymptomatic, or there are no symptoms for 2 weeks, often. And that asymptomatic period has actually is getting longer. So you can, a very kind, good-hearted person could unwittingly walk around and infect everyone they came into contact with for 2 weeks and not know it. The numbers now are not the numbers that we'll have in 2 weeks. We can't, what's going on now cannot be determined by the numbers of cases that have been tested. Most people up here have not been tested. So I'm sorry, we don't have a right to infect when in a pandemic situation like this. That's
So-
all I have to say.
So I am going to ask, I want to make sure, and so far it's been so good, but I want to make sure that we can keep the chat line in the future. So, so that people can use it for questions and stuff like that. It's not, this is really, the chat line's meant for people to be able to ask questions and get answers to their questions. It's not really meant to be the area where you kind of post your political opinions. You can do that when your time comes up to make a statement and stuff like that if you want, because if it does, then we won't be able to have the chat line feature in the future, and it's necessary for people who can't find the raise the hand function or prefer not to talk on camera. So I would just appreciate it if everybody be respectful on the line. Councilmember Such has her hand up, and so does Councilmember Plummer.
No, I thought I lowered my hand.
Oh, okay.
It's still up.
I lowered it for you.
Oh, thank you.
All right. So, Mark.
Okay, to follow up on what Councilor White had to say, it would be very nice if one has the bandwidth to put on video when you speak to us. Just a courtesy.
To put on video of, oh, are you talking about the public?
Of our guests and public who are talking with us.
Well, it's nice, but I'm not sure everyone has the bandwidth.
Well, that's why I say if it's possible. Obviously we're not going to eliminate people because we can't see them, but it would be a very nice courtesy.
Anyway, all right. So where are we at here?
A motion.
Any further discussion? We haven't had a motion yet. Well, okay.
I want to make a motion. Otherwise, it would die for lack of a motion.
I'll make a motion to waive reading and introduction of urgency ordinance number 867, reading by title only, waive further reading and adoption of an urgency ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sonora to prohibit non-essential short. Oops.
No, you're on the wrong one.
I'm on the wrong one. Sorry. Reading and introduction of urgency ordinance number 866, reading by title only, waiving further reading and adoption of an urgency ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sonora.
Yep. We include to be brought before the City Council, agendized for every meeting then?
Right, and agendized for every meeting.
As amended, okay.
Is that as a
I will second it under those with the amendment.
Councilmember Plummer, are you requesting it to be an action item or a report item?
Report item at this point, but where we can at least discuss it.
Yep.
Will do.
Okay. So I have a motion from Councilmember Such and a second by Councilmember Plummer to waive reading and introduce urgency ordinance number 866, reading by title only, waiving further reading and adoption of an urgency ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sonora. Is there any further discussion? I will call for the question. Mary Rose.
Mayor Garaventa,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hawkins,
Under protest, I still will vote yes.
Councilmember Plummer,
I think Matt speaks for us all, but I vote yes.
Councilmember Such,
I vote yes.
Councilmember Williams.
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes unanimously, and I believe that one needed a 4/5 vote, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, now we're on to item number 3 under new business. Motion to waive reading and introduce urgency ordinance number 867, reading by title only, waiving the further reading and adoption of an urgency ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sonora to prohibit non-essential short-term lodging rentals for the duration of the COVID-19 state of emergency. Mr. White.
Mayor and council, this originally, at least to my recollection, kind of originated with Calaveras County, and they took last week. The days are all blending together, but I believe it was last week. In order to address what's becoming an increasing problem in the foothills of folks coming in from out of the area who are in hot zones and being infected and not knowing that they are infected, without going into any kind of confidential medical information. we know that in other areas that has already happened, and we're not exactly aware of how high the infection rate is yet by virtue of that, but it's something that we know is an issue and something that we hope to use this to address. So effectively what this would do is address short-term rentals and prohibit them during this period of time when this public health emergency was going on. The council would have to figure out whether or not it wanted to make any kind of reservation for those who are providing essential services. The challenge there is the verification issue and things of that nature. But that's effectively what this would do, is it would put during the period of time that the declaration of emergency was in effect, a prohibition on these short-term rentals using, just for purposes of example, folks who rent through like Airbnbs and things of that nature.
And City Attorney White, on Friday, April 3rd, the Public Health Officer of Tuolumne County released an order that addressed short-term lodging as well. So he addressed that short-term facilities such as short-term rentals, vacation rentals, timeshares, hotels, motels, and other short-term lodgings would be closed except for limited purposes, such as lodging of the homeless population, lodging for purposes who need to isolate or quarantine, and also to be able to use for personal property owners. So those were the only exceptions to that health officer order on April 3rd in the county of Tuolumne.
So as drafted, you know, it is those exceptions are in there. I just want to say, because I know it's going to come up about the homeless population, that only encapsulates what's already in the governor's order in terms of what we have to do. We're not adding some new rule. We're just memorializing what's already encapsulated in the governor's order. So that's not something new. That's something that's on the books. So hotels, motels, in order to function, they would have to be able to, they would be able to rent to those folks.
And I will say, you know, in working with the county throughout this whole process, this is something that we are seeing, you know, we're seeing that influx and that surge of people trying to get out of either the Bay Area or the Valley, coming up here, enjoying our beautiful space here for the day use for a couple of days. And this is something that really the public health officer has a grave concern about, you know, having others outside of county coming into our area and not knowing the status of whether they are positive for COVID or not. So he issued that order on Friday, and this would be just a reiteration of that order and also the state order as well.
And I will say, one of my neighboring mayors happens to work for the State Park Service, and they've seen huge surges in the amount of people going up there. So that's a lot more people coming through town from out of town. And the City of Angels Camp has actually asked the federal government that they're passing a, I think as of tomorrow, they've asked us to put it on the agenda to request that this federal government shut down the federal parks during this period of time because of just the sheer surge that's happening in people traveling and going through town in order to kind of get out and escape and potentially being infected. So.
And on that note, the County of Tuolumne, along with the city, your police chief, your sheriff, have been putting a lot of pressure on the U.S. Forest Service and the federal government to shut down those federal parks. This last weekend, the U.S. Forest Service put out a press release to shut down a portion of the forest roads. So we are making progress on that. I know the County District 1 Supervisor Sherry Brennan is putting a lot of pressure at the federal level. So this is something that, you know, at the county level, we are really trying to implement some sort of, trying to limit the amount of non-county visitors entering into our county for public health purposes.
So with that, Mayor, we're happy to answer any, council, we're happy to answer any questions that you have, but that's it in a nutshell, and it's been done in neighboring jurisdictions already.
Okay. Is there any questions for staff? For the council members.
So how many of these do we have that we believe we have inside the city limits of Sonora?
You know, That's a good question. We do require business licensure for your Airbnbs. You're talking about your Airbnbs, short-term
Yes.
vacation rentals?
There's about 40 active Airbnbs in the city of Sonora.
But that, yes, active. So, that doesn't mean every Airbnb has a licensure, a business licensure, but there's about 40 that we're seeing within the city limits of Sonora.
And basically Airbnb itself didn't abide by the governor's executive order. Correct?
You mean whether or not they've closed down like the websites and not allow people to rent?
Yes.
That is correct. What Airbnb has done has put on their website that it puts the onus on the person doing the renting, that they need to check with the local laws to ensure that they are that they are ensuring that they're abiding by those laws, but they have not, in essence, shut down their website to allow for any non-rental of those vacation rentals.
So Airbnb is pretty much forcing our hand on this. Forcing us to act, or forcing the other localities to act in order to obey the law.
Well, and I would say just from our perspective in our rural mountain county, and also you're seeing in other rural counties such as Calaveras, Amador, Mariposa, El Dorado, we are trying as a group to put pressure on this industry to ensure that those visitors are staying out of our counties for the duration of the emergency, because it does, it puts a public safety, health safety risk on our population. We have a higher demographic of older citizens in Tuolumne County. We have rural health here. We do not have the, the big health systems that the cities do. So by bringing other visitors and outside residents into our county, it puts a lot of undue pressure onto our health systems and onto our citizenry.
And one of the executive orders had to do with age. Am I correct in asking that? I'm getting to this. That's why I'm asking.
You can certainly ask it if one of the executive orders had to do with age. There's been recommendations that you shelter in home at the federal level if you fall into specific categories. One of them is being 65 or older. Another one being if you have underlying health issues, in particular, if you have diabetes or high blood pressure.
So, and I guess the other way to think of it is anybody born on this day in 1955 or before is 65. Because of the way everything is gone, a lot of people I don't think understand, looking at their coworkers and others, I don't think a lot of people understand who is considered in that category now. So I'm just kind of trying to get to those questions to, I guess, make it more real.
Okay. Colette, did Colette have her hand up?
I did.
Okay.
I just wanted, in the initial introduction, it wasn't, I don't think, entirely clear that when you said that Airbnbs, VRBOs, all of these short-term rentals could be used for homeless, you could use them for the homeless. That's voluntary. That's not mandatory. You are volunteering for that. No, that's not. So I just wanted to make.
Yes. It is voluntary. It is definitely voluntary. I know the county has issued an RFP specifically to our hotels and motels in requesting any type of homelessness or displaced persons, being able to utilize the hotels and motels for displaced persons, and also for quarantine essential workers and so forth. But yes, it is voluntary. It is not as though we would be subjecting any type of short-term rental to forcibly house displaced persons. That is not at all what we're doing.
That was all.
Okay, Mr. Plummer.
Okay, I'm trying to read quickly through the ordinance to find out, and is there any exception where we had the question from one of our short-term rental proprietors, but mentioning or saying that he had emergency personnel. Is there an exception where they can come to the city, or I'm trying to figure out if there's any exception for that, and I didn't find it reading through the ordinance quickly.
So yeah, there is an exception. Section 1, B. So as an example, workers performing functions that are essential to maintain the continuity of operations for critical infrastructure, as listed in the guidelines, which is citing back to what the essential services guidelines.
So that would end up being, I mean, should anyone from the city come to ask about it, that would be very clear if they are housing a physician helping at the hospital, that's an essential worker. And
Okay, precisely.
Okay, great. I just wanted to check on that before.
But I do want to emphasize, because this is kind of a continuation of the comment that came up in the item that I answered. It's one thing to violate the code by allowing somebody to come in and renting to them, knowing it's a whole different thing to fraudulently like represent that these.
Right.
So
okay.
that's
Right.
a much more serious crime than any of the civil or administrative infractions that we've been talking about. So.
Okay. Well, and I support this because attracting people from outside the county is our biggest risk. I asked the city administrator and other people to go light on any enforcement that was driven by public complaints. While we had 0 cases up here locally, and you can't say, well, ignore the law, but it did result in us looking for an administrative system where there are several contacts before fines are even levied. And I want to see that done first, but we need to keep people from out of the county away. They are our vectors, and they are the ones who are going to kill people. I'm done.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and open it to public comment. Is there anyone like to speak on this item?
So Tammy Obar, I see you, Tara, or listed as Tara, but you'll be second because
Tammy
Obar
first.
had the hand up first, and so I'm going to unmute Tammy and lower the hand.
So hello guys again. I'm just wondering, like I said, I'm the general manager of the Sonora Inn and the Roadway Inn, and we are getting a lot of workers from out of town doing, working on building the new courthouse and working on trees and so forth. I was just trying to clarify, the construction workers still considered essential workers doing jobs in that nature.
Yes.
So we can still keep them up. Okay.
Yeah, so as of the moment, I do want to forewarn you.
Okay.
6 Bay Area counties that were the first to initiate the stay-at-homes by I think 2 days in their respective counties, which include Santa Clara, have now deemed anything but maintenance on critical infrastructure, which would literally be like water lines, sewer lines, and stuff like that, to no longer be essential. And I say that not to scare you, but to give people an idea of what has happened in those 6 counties has tended then to be what happens in the rest of the state in fairly short order. So as of the moment, as we're talking here at this meeting, construction workers for all purposes would be deemed essential. But that could change. And again, we're getting executive orders 1, 2 to the day.
We are hoping to work with the county and do the shelters for the homeless and so forth. We're just waiting on that word. But I was just seeing where we stand at this point. So thank you.
Yeah, and if you ever have any questions, please contact the city. Because our goal here is to really work with everybody and to let them know if there's an issue or not. So if you ever have a question, then whether you ask than not.
Okay, well, I thank you guys so much.
Okay, so
thank you.
To now, I said Tara would be next, and then would be Lori's iPhone after that. So I'm going to unmute Tara. All right.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep. See you too.
So I have something on my mind. This is more of a statement. Is that okay?
Yeah.
It's public comment.
Okay. I've been writing down some notes here, and basically I wanted to say on all this, what's going on, I feel that what's going on and what's being implemented, the fining the people, you know, arresting people, it's been going on in other states. And I feel like this is all happening in increments, and it's all gonna start with something small. It's gonna start with fines, then it's gonna start with arrests, and then it's gonna get more and more and more. And you know, I feel like America is becoming Soviet Russia. Like, we need papers to be on the street, to be walking around. And I feel that this virus has been used as a laugh if you want, man, but I feel that that this virus has been used to push laws under the people's noses. That, you know, it's the same thing that happened with 9/11, the Patriot Act. They took a lot of rights away, and this is another swing at it right here to take more rights away and to create a new normal. So I feel they're using fear as a weapon to control us as in on a global scale, and this is a global agenda that the few elites who run this world are trying to do. And it's going to start with fines. It's going to start with, you know, you're not allowed to buy seeds, you're not allowed to farm, you're not allowed to this, and it's going to build and build and build till we have nothing and we're living as comfortable slaves, you know. And so that's how I feel about this. And some of my notes, it's just, I know that this is happening on a you know, a bigger scale, and you know, as a county, we have to go with what the government's telling us. But I think our government is corrupt, and I think we're headed to a bad place if we let these little things to go unnoticed. Okay, and you know, laugh if you want, and that's crazy, you know, but the government truly does not have our best interest in mind. Okay, this is a push to truly control the world on a mass scale, and China's the you know, the staple. That's how they want the rest of the world. Okay, and you know, and lots of things are being passed under our noses, and it's tightening down and down, and this is going to be the new normal. And if you don't know about, there's going to be forced vaccinations. I truly hope that's not the case, but that's what we seem to be coming to. And if we let these little things keep building up and keep taking our rights away, you know, it's we're going to be headed to a bad place, people. You know, and think that's crazy or whatnot, but it's called the New World Order, and it's a real thing. And if you really look into it and wake up to that fact, you'll see this world is a lot different than what we think it is. And that's my statement. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to mute Tara again, and then Lori's iPhone is next, followed by John.
Okay, hi guys, miss you. So I just wanted to remind you that VRBO is also, you know, to be kept in mind, as well as Airbnb. They're not the only platform that's used in our county for visitors. And to remind you that Airbnb, we ramped through them, that their website is very much encouraging the homeowners to do what they feel is best for them and their community. We have a room in our house, and we wouldn't be wanting to rent to somebody that's coming from out of the county, but that's us for sure. But they are encouraging people to rent to doctors and people that could come and help our community, but not in rooms in a house, only in standalone places that those people could be secure in their location and not to infect anybody else in the community. So, you know, I really feel like they're doing their part and they're not leaving you out in the cold. And then also to know that if there was a short-term, it's at the county level anyway, if there was short-term rentals going on, you would know that through the tot tax that was coming in. If somebody's renting out for one night or 2 nights, you'll know compared to if somebody's coming up for the long term to help us out. So that's all I wanted to say. Keep up the good work. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
All right, and John would be next.
You guys hear me? I know it's probably quiet.
Yeah, can you?
Yeah, just speak up the best you can. I can hear you with headphones. I don't know if anyone else can. If not, I'll just repeat you.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that I understood that we could still house people that are providing essential services. It sounds like we are.
Yes.
What is the vetting process for that? Is that obviously all land on me, the host? Are you guys providing? I'm sure you're not, but so that's one question. I assume that's the host that would vet these people, and then also what's the time frame that this will go into effect if I have guests right now staying for 3 weeks, for instance, and this law or ordinance that you pass now, do I interrupt their stay and send them home tomorrow? Trying to understand exactly how we're to move forward with this, practically speaking.
Now, did Mary Rose and Doug, did you get all that?
Yeah. So if you had, essential services are basically the services that are allowed under the governor's order under critical infrastructure. If you don't know what those are, then you could contact the city and we can provide you with the executive order and the portions of it that you're allowed to rent to.
It's also attached to the urgency ordinance before, so it's attached to this urgency ordinance.
And it is a long, long list. It includes a lot of people.
So that's first and foremost, and they have to be performing those. It can't be people who are critical infrastructure on vacation. It has to be people who are doing that and staying there for purposes of performing their job activity. So let me be clear about that. So that's number one. Number two would be on the person who's renting to make sure that there is compliance, and there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can do that. But candidly, I mean, most people in Sonora are responsible, and we're gonna go in unless we're proven wrong and assume that people are gonna act responsibly and do the right thing, and only rent to people who meet those. And if it becomes a big, huge problem, because we'll find out, because if people wind up getting infected because of it, all that where they were staying, who they had contact with, that all becomes a part of everything that's reported to the government and to the public health officer and to the state. So that all gets known. And if we have to be more vigilant, then we will, but ultimately would be on you. So again, you can rent for people who are meet those categories, but only if they're here to perform those functions, not just for a vacation.
And then he asked Doug about the, sorry, Mayor, but he asked about the effectiveness of the urgency ordinance, and if he had people staying in his vacation rental now, would he have to ensure that they leave if it goes into effect now?
So if they're currently here and they've already been booked, then you would not have to interrupt their stay because it's a continuation of a stay that originated beforehand. However, if somebody booked beforehand and is supposed to show up, later this week, then you would not be able to do it. The ordinance, because it is an urgency ordinance, would go in effect today. But again, if somebody's already staying there, you don't have to kick them out.
Okay.
So I'm going to mute John. John, are you good?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, the only, liability is obviously a huge thing here, and especially given what you just mentioned about disclosing all this information. Having our, I guess, having the guests sign something saying that they are essential worker.
Yeah, I think that if I was, I can't give legal advice, but generically speaking, what from a city perspective, we would probably love to see you have some kind of paperwork saying they were performing X job and they were here only for purposes of that job and performing the functions of that job. That's what I think, if it ever came down to it, they'd be looking for. And that's probably what the public health officer, if there was people who became infected, would be looking for. I will tell you that doesn't, for all of us who are employers or engaged in any kind of business, this is a really complicated time because, you know, you also have to make sure that the people who stayed there before, that you don't rent out rooms that turn out to have people who were infected in them and then wind up infecting people afterwards, and then looking at that from a liability standpoint. So it's a really challenging time for all of us all around. You good, John?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna mute John, and Kate Dunn's iPad is next.
Hey, so I have a question. So I have 3 Airbnbs, one in downtown Sonora, 2 up in Groveland. And over the weekend, we did have an inquiry for one of our Groveland properties from somebody who was displaced by the U.S. Embassy and was flying into San Francisco and needed a place, lodging, to isolate and quarantine for the next 2 weeks. And so of course, I had this printed out from the Tuolumne County Health and Human Services Agency, the April 3rd document that came out. And so I was trying to figure it out when I was responding to them and letting them know that I needed to get with our public health officer to make sure that this was okay. And in the meantime, they found some other lodging, but this was a really unique situation, and I'm sure it's not going to be the only one coming our way.
Correct.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
We would ask that if, you know, when you have people who are coming from out of the country and are being sent here to self-quarantine, that you contact the public health officer and kind of work with them, because there's particularly if it finds out that they are infected, it's not just limiting them and making sure we know where they go, who they come in contact with, but it's also making sure that the unit that you have rented to them is disinfected to a certain level so that whoever comes into it afterwards doesn't wind up getting infected. So
yeah, I would echo that. Please ensure you contact Tuolumne County Public Health and the health officer. Yeah.
Right. That was our plan to do this morning, because it came in over the weekend, and then they ended up going with somebody else. So, but I just kind of wanted to bring that to your attention.
So, and just
thank you, Katie.
For the public, what you just described, well, it coming from the U.S. Embassy and being told to self, that's unique, right? People being told to self-quarantine and them trying to find different locations is not unique, and it is a pressure that we expect that's going to be coming over to here. And people are in particular looking for areas that at the moment aren't overrun, so that they have readily access to hospitals and ventilators and things of that nature in the event that they need them. And it's also important to recognize that Sonora serves a larger community than just Sonora. It's the county aspect of it, but even Angels Camp in Calaveras, they go over to Sonora, or they have to go to San Joaquin. Yeah. San Joaquin is pretty hot right now. So if it was me, I'd be coming to Sonora, but that means that you have that many more cases, potential cases headed your way.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Katie. Who's next? Is it Doug?
So she already spoke once, but we'll give everybody one mulligan. You know, tonight's the first time we're using the technology. Tammy O'Barr.
Sorry, I apologize for doing twice. I just wanted to reply to kind of John and the hotels and give them a little bit of what we're doing. When a guest is coming in, we have created a list that the people come in, tell us what business they're working for, what kind of essential duty they're doing. And, you know, it gives us a sense of security as well, you know, in case we get audited or anything like that down the line. And then I did also want to say that what we're practicing is, of course, occupancy is not that high right now. So when we have a guest, we are putting our rooms out of order for 3 days before allowing even our staff to go in there and clean it to help, you know, possibly reduce the spread if one of our guests did have it.
Yep.
Very good.
I just wanted to send that out there.
Great policy if you can do it. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think Tammy is muted again. So I don't see anybody else. So Mayor, if anybody else wants to, oh,
Okay.
I didn't go to the chat line. Let me see if there's anything there.
So if anyone else wants to have their shot at public comment on this item, this is the time.
Can you still put up a house for rent, like on Craigslist, you know, like monthly? So can you do normal kind of rental? This doesn't apply to normal, like, you know, ongoing month-to-month type lease situations.
So the answer to her question is yes, she can.
Yes.
Yeah, like,
Short-term-
you know, so on a month-to-month basis would be the minimum, I mean, that you'd be able to do. I am concerned candidly that that folks will use some of these rules to kind of get around, circumvent some of the issues, and when some of the goals is to make it as safe as we can for everybody. But yeah, if it's on a month-to-month rental agreement, that would not be considered a short-term rental. Go to the hospital. Need it. So perhaps there should be a required form for these entities to use for screening purposes, and then there would be a paper trail should one need it. Candidly, we're chasing our tails right now, even trying to keep up with what we've got. If we have the ability to do it, we can look at giving a sample form out. I don't want to make that promise. And at this moment, I think we're really going to rely on our business communities and folks who are renting their places out, good judgment, that they're going to help us enforce this. And so I don't see any other questions. So I guess one last call, and if not, then let's move.
Yep. Well, last call for public comment. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and bring it back to the council for discussion. Anybody?
Okay, so I just want to thank Lori and Katie for setting the example.
Yep.
I really appreciate it. I know they're I know them both personally, and I know they're responsible business owners as it is. But thank you for being public about your example. It really shows a lot. And thank you.
Okay.
I agree.
So if there's no discussion, I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make it. Do you trust me to make a motion?
Sure.
I'll try to make the right one. I motion to waive reading and introduction of urgency ordinance number 867, reading by title only, waive further reading and adoption of an urgency ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sonora to prohibit non-essential short-term lodging rentals for the duration of the COVID-19 state of emergency.
Okay.
22nd.
All right. So it's been moved by Councilmember Such and seconded by Councilmember Williams to waive reading and introduce urgency ordinance number 867. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the question. Mary Rose?
Mayor Garaventa,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hawkins,
Yes.
Councilmember Plummer,
Yes.
Councilmember Such,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. 5-0. Item New business item number 4 is informational item to discuss Governor Newsom's Executive Order N-33-20, requiring all citizens to stay at home unless needed to maintain operation of essential critical infrastructure. And the presenter is Douglas L. White, City Attorney.
Mayor and Council, this is one, I mean, we may change the wording a little bit that you'll probably see on every agenda from here on out, at least to the extent that we're under a declaration of emergency at the state level. I have no idea how long this is going to be. I've seen models for California that go from everything from April 21st being the apex through the middle of June. And again, apex only means that you're not getting an increase in more cases, that it's either leveled off or it's gone down. So I think the most important thing, and one of the reasons that you've seen such high engagement at one point in time, I think we were up to like 79 people on at one point in time, is that people just want information, and they want it from people who live in their community because they're at least a little bit more trusted than people who are in Washington, D.C. or Sacramento. So with that, I think we've gone on and touched a lot of the issues, that are important to folks. I will say probably the single most prominent question that I get from the 20, 25 different jurisdictions that we represent is what's essential and what's not essential. And candidly, that continues to evolve. As you can see what's happened in the Bay Area, and in different places, it's a little bit different. And in different jurisdictions, it's different. So as an example, we represent the city of Dixon, and in Solano County, they recently came out with last week that you can no longer go into restaurants to even pick up your takeout food, that it has to be done curbside. So you have to get your food outside, and you have to either pay online, over the phone, or basically at the doorways, with the idea being that you're not sharing a bill the food's being made. So that's something that they have done. Again, we talked about the construction industry in the Bay Area. Down in LA, they've even gotten rid of the farmers markets and things of that nature. In Angels Camp, we've had to close all of the parks because of lack of soap in the public restrooms, as well as the risk of infection on playground equipment from kids. That being said, I think it's pretty safe to say that we should expect this to at least go through the end of May in terms of the current way that we're doing business. And if anything, I would expect that it gets more strict in the coming weeks as opposed to less strict. That's just kind of the trend as things tend to ramp up, and as we kind of are dealing with the real life epidemics on it. I will say that if you watch California's trend, we are significantly better as a state than most other states. And in addition to that, the Central Valley and the foothills have been significantly better than the Bay Area and and Southern California. So if I had to pick anywhere to live right now, I probably would want to live in Sonora, because you got a hospital there, and it's a good one. And you got a lot of great fresh air and trails and natural places to go and work and get outside and stretch your legs. So, with that, this is really an opportunity for your city administrator and and your police chief and fire chief and finance department to answer any questions that you have. I've never been a part of something where every person literally almost in the world has been affected, and I see you, Tara, in one way or another. I've never seen this in my lifetime. I hope I never see it again. The economic impacts are absolutely devastating, and we all know somebody who's been affected, if not by their health, then by the economics of it. So I don't want to understate anything or make people feel like the effects, whether it's economic or health-wise, aren't real, because they are. That being said, we hope to be a resource to make sure that those who are isolated, who are in an at-risk category, have resources to reach out to people, to make sure that people know that they're safe, and see if make sure their needs are being met. It's one of the great things about small towns like Sonora. We can watch out for each other and take care of each other. In addition to that, if you own a small business or operate a business or have been put out of work or laid off, Our hope is in the near future, we'll make resources available to you so that you can know where to go and at least try to be one of the first in line to try to get those resources available to you. So with that, this is really an opportunity for the council to ask questions of us and for us to answer questions to the public to the extent that we can or legally allowed to. Certain health information we clearly aren't allowed to talk about publicly, but to the extent that we can, we will.
Okay. Before we go to questions, I want to go over to Mary Rose and see if she has anything to talk on this item.
Yeah, I just want to echo everything that City Attorney White is saying. And I also want to stress the point that the city is doing all it can to coordinate and to work with our county partners. They are public health officials, so we are really operating under their guidance. And it's very critical that we do. So very appreciative of the council approving that first item for us. They have the expertise, they have the knowledge of this. And so we're really, operating under theirs. And then I also wanted to state that we have put out some information on our website about where small businesses can go for help, whether it be with the Small Business Administration. And also we are coordinating with the county through their economic development director in the guidance that they're putting out as well to small businesses. So whether it's on our website through the City of Sonora, whether it's on the County of Tuolumne's website, there's plenty of resources right now for small businesses to receive assistance that the federal government and state government have been offering.
Mayor, can I just make one, I just forgot one thing. When we do these wellness checks, it's not just for people who fall into these at-risk categories. It's also for people who may have lost their job and maybe their mental health isn't exactly they're not in the best frame of mind. So it's for multiple avenues. Sometimes this isolation and the staying at home can have, and the scariness of what happens when you go outside. It's not restricted to just, folks who are at risk. It can be anyone, including people who have lost their job or businesses and are just scared about what tomorrow will bring. So again, we want to make sure that we have those resources available, even from a community standpoint, to reach out and make sure people have. And hopefully one of us, if we can't agree on anything else as a group today unanimously, it's hopefully that we can take care of each other during this period of time. So.
And one other thing, the website for small business owners or employees or whatever, to receive that information on business loan information, on employment, unemployment. Again, once again, the county has set up a great website. It's called tcdisasterassistance.com. And if you go on that website, there's a whole lot of information that businesses and the unemployed can look to for guidance and assistance.
Okay, council questions for our attorney and our city administrator on this item. No one? Okay.
Well, it's not a
Mr.
question.
Plummer?
It's not a question, but I would like to just make a short statement that we really support our businesses. We really dislike being in a position where saving lives and trying to protect this community puts us in a position of having to do this. One, we have to follow the law insofar as the governor is commanding, and at least parts of what we voted on tonight are seriously for public safety. I've read some of the comments in where people are treating it as a chat room. We take this very seriously. And the best part about doing this at a local level is that you can come, well, hard to talk with us face to face, but normally you can. And you can always phone us or write. And we are the people, we are the government closest to you. We really do care about these things, and we have some of the same concerns that have been expressed in the comments. Done.
Okay, thank you. One of the questions I had, and actually Rick Poppy just kind of alluded to it, when does the well, he alluded to it in the chat room in a way. When is the resources getting down to our level? I know that they passed the stimulus bill back in DC. When does that all get down here and the funding gets into the SBA, the SBDC, so that businesses have, I see smiles on your faces because it sounds like you don't have an idea either, right?
I know when they've told us.
Yeah.
So
Whether it comes to fruition or not. Go ahead, Doug.
2 to 3 weeks. That's what we've been told. I don't believe it for a second. So
2 to 3 weeks from now, or 2 to 3 weeks from
last week.
Passed. Yeah, when it was passed.
Mm-hmm. That's what Treasurer Munchin, I don't know how you say his last name.
Mnuchin.
How do you say it?
I'm not certain, but it's Mnuchin, I believe.
Mnuchin, yeah, I think so.
So getting into the minutia, but yeah. So they said it was going to be 2 to 3 weeks. They would start getting hands into folks. Just since Friday, when the PPP program opened up with the SBA loan, there's been applications that exceed the amount of money that's available through it. The SBA usually handles about $300 million worth of loans, and they're being asked to handle basically in 2-3 weeks, $750 million. So not quite triple the load, but certainly over double, and do it within 2-3 weeks. So they're just not built to really handle that. We've also seen some fairly significant backlogs as it relates to unemployment claims and processing. Which is one of the things, I mean, just to be very transparent, one of the things in order to be able to pay all this unemployment money and wait for the state to even get money from the federal government to backfill some of it from the original $1.1 billion that the president allocated to California. They have suspended basically most tax payments that cities receive for 2 to 3 months. So we won't get money for an extra 2 or 3 months, so that the state has the money to basically backfill the unemployment hole. So the effects of economic effects of what's going on hit directly even on the city, because the city gets most of its revenue 2 times a year. There are quarterly sales tax payments and stuff, but they've pushed out most of all of those deadlines on which they have to pay. Okay. So the city's having to go basically 2-3 months without any extra money coming in, or at least that's
it's going to be a big burden.
So, but the difference is between the city and other places is we'll eventually get it, or at least supposed to. So unless it's like redevelopment. Any other council questions? We will plan on trying to do a workshop to answer, I think, Rick's question that you were talking about, Mayor. We'll try to do that small business workshop either late this week or next week.
Okay. Is there any other questions from the council? Colette? Well, you have to unmute yourself. There you go.
There just was a question from Lori about help for nonprofits. And Lori, have you looked at the SBA website?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to open up to public comment, and hopefully Lori will ask that question. We'll just
okay.
Get it. Yeah.
Well, just because she posted it in the chat, I'll just go ahead and open it. The SBA programs do apply to nonprofits.
Nonprofits, yes.
I can go through it with you, Lori, if you'd like.
So public comment is open. Does anyone like to speak on this item?
I did say Tara would be first up, Mayor.
Okay.
I'm going to unmute Tara right now.
Hello.
Yep.
I just wanted to comment on the small businesses. Me and my girlfriend here, we're small-time farmers. We're local microgreen farmers here in Sonora, and it's just strange to me how they're closing down all the small businesses. And you said, Douglas, in Calaveras, they're not doing the farmers markets, right?
That was LA. That was LA.
Oh, okay. Thank God. Well, doesn't seem too far off anyway, but we're local microgreen farmers, and it just seems funny to me how they're squashing the small businesses, but McDonald's and Walmart and, you know, all the big name billion-dollar, you know, places, they're all open, and, you know, that's essential, and it causes even more of a risk, if not the same, of, you know, a small business owner. So I don't understand the logic. I mean, it's not really that hard to see what the agenda is, you know, to close, to just make everybody relying on the government. So, you know, like I said before, you know, so we are all under that thumb, and it's all the superstores and government rations for our food. You know, they don't want farmers, you know. That's probably going to be soon, I have a feeling, unfortunately. What?
In regards to the comment from Jolie, most stores were purchasing from small farmers, but now they've had to cut back because a lot of stuff is getting purchased. It's not vegetables. You go into Walmart, most things that are getting bought are frozen foods.
Hot pockets.
So most of us farmers are suffering because everyone's in this fear, in this state where they want to go pack up and make sure they're good for the next year. And vegetables, I don't know why those are supposed to
I
be
don't
the best
know,
for
you know, it seems strange, you know, the logic there, the common sense, it just seems strange to me that the superstores can stay open, but they're squashed. I mean, it's not that hard to see, everyone. It's not, you know, what the agenda is, you know, and this is going to be the new normal.
I guess
unfortunately,
our biggest question is how come McDonald's gets to be essential when most of us farmers,
you know,
can't even stay open?
Yeah, you know, they're making, like, you know, the camping sections in Walmart not essential. The seeds, you can't buy seeds, and this is, you know, it's increments, little things, you know. I mean, look into it. It's not hard to find, you know. They don't want you to buy seeds. I'm sure right now, you know, you can go buy some, but, you know, it's in increments, like I was saying before, and that's kind of what I wanted to say. You know, it's strange that how it's silly, really. It makes no sense.
Kara, is the farmery still open?
We are, yes.
The farmer's still open. Yep. Thank God.
I think my wife still goes there.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's great to hear. We really appreciate everyone that comes out there, and we are open the extra 2 days now, so that if you are immune compromised, you can come out Tuesdays and Fridays and support us. I guess our biggest issue is, since they've deemed seeds non-essential, most of us farmers are struggling
but surely,
struggling to keep production up for you guys. That's another issue we've come into.
So I'm not aware of them declaring seeds non-essential. So if you have some contact,
no, we're essential right now, as far as right now, anyway.
So, but are you saying that you can't get seeds? Seeds, you can't buy seeds?
No, we can buy seeds right now, but like I was saying earlier,
you fear that that's what's coming.
I fear that's what's coming. Exactly.
Okay, I understand that. Yeah, because I work at where I work, they sell seeds. So
yeah,
I was wondering most. Okay, hopefully we're not going down that road. And
I hope not, sir. I really.
We all hope we're not going down that road.
Well, we're all going to need food regardless.
That's true.
Yeah. You know, from, you know, anyway, just throwing that out there, guys. That was all.
Sure. Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Tara, I'm going to mute you right now. And then I think Lainey Noonan is going to be next, Mayor. Unmute.
Hi guys, thank you. I'm just jumping on. I've been on here the last 3 hours. I appreciate all of your guys' service. I understand you guys are powerless over so much, and you guys are just abiding by the governor's orders, and you're trying to keep our community safe. I just wanted to thank you guys. I know you're getting a lot of flack on here. There's a lot of things you guys don't have control over. Me personally being immune compromised, and then I know there was the lady earlier, Myron, or I forget what her name was, who was elderly. Myrna. Thank you. Who are in the category, the at-risk. You know, I understand that a lot of people are frustrated about the economical impacts of this and their business is closing, but I appreciate you guys, you know, putting or holding these. Anyways, I just appreciate the effort that you guys are putting on in to keeping our community safe, to keeping those who are compromised safe, because there are a lot of people, you know, who can go about their day, and if they catch the virus, it's not going to affect them, but how many people are they going to pass it to? So anyways, I just wanted to jump on and say thank you guys for doing what you're doing, and it is appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, is there anyone else? I can't hear Doug at all. Doug, are you there?
He's muted.
That's what happens.
He's me. Okay.
Accidentally mute yourself and then hit the reduce button instead of the, anyway. So computer issues. This is just a reminder that if you're on a regular phone, if you hit *9, it'll raise your hand. Or if you're by video, just raise your hand and I'll call on you. And then, or in the, hit your raise the hand function on your iPad or computer.
Okay.
I don't
Do
see
we have any more public comment out there, Doug, or?
I don't see any more.
Okay. Are you going to look through the chat to see if there's any questions?
I see comments. I don't see any.
Okay. Okay. So go ahead and then close the public comment. And that was just an informational item, that portion of it. So it's just information coming down from that our city attorney, who represents several cities actually in the Central California, Northern and Central California, and also our city administrator who has sources, innumerable sources maybe, I don't know, want to relate to the city council. So that was just an informational item. So what I'm going to do then is to go from new business to our item H, which is council member and department head reports. And I think I will start with our community development director, Ms. Kellogg, if she's still here.
I'm here.
You're upstairs, aren't you?
I am. I'm sitting here. Everybody needs to stay safe, and we just keep rolling along, and we're here to provide services. So we just can't come in and see us, but as long as the public's aware that they can contact us, our office hours are the same, and we do the best to get done what we're able to do under these circumstances. So.
Okay, thank you. We'll go next to Administrative Services Director, Mr. Gorski.
Yeah, I would just like to repeat, repeat what Rochelle said. We are open and available. If there's some service they need, please call. And everyone stay safe, and that's it. Thanks.
Okay, great. Fire Chief, Amy New.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, nothing to report today. Thank you.
Okay, great. Police Chief, Mr. Vanderweel.
Yes, like the other departments, we're still here. We're still conducting business. We're still responding to calls. So none of that has changed. Essentially, we got your back. We're there for you. Let's get through this sooner than later. Thank you.
Cool, great. City Attorney, anything? Mr. White, do we need anything from you?
No, we're just continuing to monitor the situation as it's ever changing and evolving. Expect more meetings than we would normally have if there's major updates or things that we need to deal with. And we'll try to, now that things are slowing down a little bit from the initial, start to roll out some workshops for small business and others so that we can get as much information out to folks.
Okay, great. City Administrator, Mary Rose.
I just want to just let the public know and the city council as well that we are trying to keep our City of Sonora Facebook page and website up to date as much as possible. So we post all public health officer orders to our Facebook page, and any other orders such as the Forest Service order that came out yesterday. We try to post them as soon as we see them. So if you have any questions about any up-to-date information, please visit our Facebook page. You can also visit the Sonora Police Department Facebook page. They try to keep it as up-to-date as much as possible. If you have any questions concerning essential versus non-essential, please don't hesitate to call City Hall. And also, please stay informed with Tuolumne County Public Health, as they have the most current up-to-date information about the COVID-19.
Okay, and our Facebook page is labeled City of Sonora, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, do we have an Instagram or is it just Facebook?
Just Facebook.
Just Facebook, okay. All right, then I'm gonna go to the council. Connie, do you have anything?
Nothing new, nine.
Okay, thank you. Colette.
I just want to thank the small businesses of Sonora and actually of Tuolumne County for, I know that this is an unbearable hardship for you, and hopefully we'll get through this sooner rather than later, and hopefully it won't be tragic. Thanks. That's it.
Okay. Matt.
I just wanted to thank everyone, and this is not a good experience for anybody, but we will get through it together. So I just thank our friends and neighbors, our constituents, and we'll get through this together.
Okay, Mark.
Many of us feel that we are at low risk, and that's the vast bulk of our population. I would just ask those of you who feel that way to be respectful of people who are at higher risk. Most of us are polite and caring, and while a lot of what we are dealing with feels like a punishing edict from on high, most of us will simply not be affected because we're polite and respectful of other people's rights and safety and human dignity. And I would just urge people to think of it in those terms and be good to each other from a distance. Thank you.
Wow. I don't think I could have said it better myself. So with that, I echo Mark's statements, and we will adjourn the meeting, and we'll see you, unless we have any special meetings in the interim. We'll be here 2 weeks from today at 5 o'clock. Meeting adjourned.
Night.
Night.
Good night.
9.